be an indie means we buck a system that doesn't want us. To be a fringe filmmaker means we don't do it for them. We do it for ourselves. To be an outlaw on the fringe means we'll die before we fail. Be an outlaw. Joe.
George, we're fashionably late.
How are you, buddy?
I am well. Yourself?
I'm okay. I only have one thing to say to everybody who's been patiently waiting for us to get started. Fuck you, Joe.
I love you, man. So, season 2 finale.
Where's your respirator? Where's your hazmat suit? What are you doing? Are you
to give it to the dog?
Well, that's admirable. I like that. Guess what? I have this fancy little thing here. I am trying to cut down on my cigarettes finally. So for anybody who knows me, I see the look of shock on your face is crazy. But the best thing about it is I can actually smoke during the show now.
Yeah, but Camel's going to go out of business.
Yeah, just because of me. Man, season 2, season finale. What do you think about that amid the coronavirus?
Yeah.
Sorry, amid COVID-19. Friday the 13th, season finale. The world is in quarantine. Everybody's fucked. We're all going to die. And it's time to panic. I hope you've got toilet paper because that is the most important thing going on.
Not only that, I've got 2-ply.
Wow. So you could separate that. You're good for a while.
Yes.
The dog's good. Family's good. Everything's safe. Nobody's dying. All right.
And we even went to the liquor store just in case that was the next thing to start going.
Yeah, that's why you went to the liquor store. Anyway, welcome to Romero Pictures Indie Brigade. With me, your host, George C. Romero. My ever faithful and amazing producer, Joe Ridgely, is on camera with me as always. Love that fucking guy, even though I blame him for everything. And by the way, if anybody's, affected or your business is affected or anything in your life is affected by this thing we're going through as a world right now, we all know what to do. Take a big old sip of Blame Joe. Fuck you, Joe.
Anytime.
We have a pretty great show tonight, and then David Madison has a pretty great show tonight. For those of you who are new to the Indie Brigade, for those of you who are used to the way things used to have been and maybe missed us last week, we have a new addition to the Brigade, David Lee Madison, and with The End of the Night. His show comes on the same night as ours, 30 minutes after we're done, or however, at 11 o'clock his show comes on. So we might finish it, 10:50 or whatever. So he comes on at 11 o'clock. He's got some great guests lined up tonight. Right after our amazing guests, we've got some amazing people tonight, don't we? You're supposed to say something or validate me in some way. Fuck you. God damn it. We got Rocky Gray, composer extraordinaire. We've got Brian Herskowitz, screenwriting professor at Boston University. And we've got Bryce Campbell, a distribution executive. So these guys are all dear friends of mine, and I'm excited to talk about everything with these guys. I'm excited to drop some knowledge on everybody tonight. And I'm excited that everybody is here. Internet traffic is up 80% or so, I'm told, by Mr. David Lee Madison, and I believe him more than I believe half the shit I'm reading about this damn COVID-19. So if internet traffic is up 80%, then we should have a boost in people tonight. We need to make sure we welcome all the new people. We need to make sure that we give everybody the full experience, let them know what the Indie Brigade is all about, let them know all about what's part of the Indie Brigade. And maybe, we should start off by letting you tell everybody where they can hear the audio only version.
Damn it, you're going to put me on the spot again. Let me find that ticker that I made. Okay, iHeartRADIO, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, TuneIn, RadioPublic, and Breaker. A few more are coming out. I just need to add them. Again, I've been slacking.
God damn it, Joe.
Right? The nerve of some people.
You. Romero Pictures Indie Brigade podcast is now available on Avail TV. Good job, Joe. There it is. Romero Pictures Indie Brigade is now available on Avail TV, which is a brand new app on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV, as well as Apple TV Plus. All of our episodes are up there currently. I think we've still got a couple that are being loaded in. And it's a pretty great platform. If you're not familiar with it, find it on one of those devices, download it, install it, and look for the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade channel. There's my beautiful wife, Rebecca. I'm just going to say hi to her, and I love her so much. And I've covered all of the entrances to the house tonight while she's at work with saran wrap. So we're going to have one of those moments where, you know, I don't know if she's going to be allowed back in because of COVID-19. It's going to be terrible. And it's cool, though, because if I die, just film it, right? I don't know if anybody saw that post today, but we're doing a special on our quarantine. If I die, film it. Let everybody know your last wishes. If you're dealing with the COVID-19, if you're out there, let everybody know what you want to happen. Just go, you know, through that link on our Indie Brigade page. I think I shared it out. Some other people shared it out. There's a 10% off code on this particular shirt for it's a quarantine discount. So go and spread the word. Tell people that, you know, when you die, you want them to film it. Brian Clegg, 8-track, not yet, but we are working on it. We've got to invent that time machine first.
Somebody who cares.
That's not why we pick on Joe. It's not even paid. It's just assigning blame where it belongs, really.
And ladies and gentlemen, hence the liquor store earlier.
Let's talk about something else very cool. Let's talk about a couple of other very cool little announcements. So this is our season finale, as we've said. Next week we take off. Joe said something about needing a break or something. I don't know. Whatever. But we're going to take this time and we're going to kind of evolve the Indie Brigade a little bit more. We're going to start offering some micro content on our Instagram. We're going to start offering some mini content through our Facebook channel. And we're going to try to expand the dialogue and the conversation across a few different platforms here between our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook accounts. We feel like it's probably a good way to increase the conversation, spread the word about the Indie Brigade, and just kind of, you know, spread that infectious type thing so it goes viral.
They have an ointment for that.
You don't even have like a sound effect or anything. That was like nothing. That just was crickets.
Okay, come on, the whole freaking ointment thing wasn't good enough.
Your timing was off. It ruined the whole thing. Fuck you, Joe.
Oh, man.
Here's a cool brainchild. Here's something that happened. In light of everything being canceled, we've got basically the entire country has been canceled. Hey, that's a good idea. I like that. The Blame Joe drinking game. Oh, coming soon from Romero Pictures Indie Brigade. The Blame Joe drinking game. Rule set coming soon. No, everything's being canceled. The whole country's being canceled, and it's really fucked up, but it's, you know, it's probably smart. It's not bothering me that the stuff is being canceled. What's bothering me is how much it's affecting a lot of people. And a lot of those people are in our Indie Brigade, and a lot of those people have small businesses, and a lot of those people are struggling to get deals made, and a lot of those people are struggling to close financing or get their movie made or get everybody together. And it's stopping all of that. Everything all the way down to conventions are being canceled now. Isn't that right?
That is right. Fan
conventions are being canceled. And it makes sense. You know, I mean, I get it. They're trying to quell the spread, and that all makes sense. But you know what I'm hearing, and a bunch of people said to me today, is they all said the same thing. We understand why they're canceling everything. We think it's a bit overreactionary, but the problem is now there's nothing to fucking do. So now we hear that the internet usage is up 80%. And so now we've come up with something to do.
Oh, did you want me to bring that up now?
I'm trying to give you enough warning. So you know, this is the graphic time.
Okay, but I figured you'd at least announce it and then bam.
Oh, okay. Well, usually you're like 5 seconds off that. So, you know, are you ready? There you go. Romero Pictures Indie Brigade DEFCON 1. No contact, no mask, no filters. 2020. We are going to do what we hope is the first internet-only fan convention. That's right. There's going to be celebrities. We've even figured out a way to let vendors come and have booths and sell their stuff. And we're going to do panels, and it's going to be hopefully a big 2-day event. So we are working on this feverishly, hoping to have the details out to you faster than the testing kits are coming for the COVID-19. So look for information on that by Monday. It's a very exciting thing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to dig it. We've got a lot of cool things in mind for it. We've got a lot of cool things planned, and we think that everybody in the Indie Brigade, along with all your friends, family, and anybody you know who has anything in the independent creator world to sell, would be very interested in being a part of. Brian Clegg, a lot of us artists who rely on conventions are suffering. There you go, man. That's exactly the motivation for the online convention. We're going to do it. We're going to do it first. We're going to do it loud. It might not all go smooth. It probably won't. We all know whose fault that'll be, but fuck it. We're going to do it because that's the punk rock spirit of the Indie Brigade, man.
And it's my fault the schools are closed for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it is. It's your dude. This entire thing is your fault, quite frankly. So that's where we're at. These are some things we're doing. We're going to give you all something to do, and it's going to be fun as shit. And it is going to be fun. Yeah. And we're going to expand that over time. So stay tuned to find out the people who are going to be involved. Stay tuned to find out the celebs who will be there. Stay tuned to find out how you can interact with them in sort of our no contact way that's very similar to when you go to a convention. It's going to be cool. You're going to get to talk to celebrities one-on-one. You're going to get your pictures with them. It's all going to be commemorative of this fucking COVID-19 quarantine period we're in. Romero Pictures, DEF CON 1, no contact, no mask, no filters. 2020 coming soon. Stay tuned. And then in 2 weeks, we've got our season 3 premiere. So that's going to be pretty epic as well.
Yes, there will be no show next week.
Yeah, a lot of cool things going on at the Indie Brigade. As always, we are we're gathering no moss, and I'm happy about that.
All right, it is 9:15. Time for you to introduce our first guest and tell everybody what they're listening to, please.
Listen, there's your dead air. Rocky Gray, what's up, man? Thank you for joining Romero Pictures Indie Brigade podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, yo.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Are you in a hermetically sealed room? Are you good? Are you safe?
Yeah, that's kind of normal for me, though. It's kind of what I
do. It's really great that you've decided to spend some of your Friday night with us. Why don't you sort of introduce yourself to anybody who's watching and might not know who you are, and shout out to anybody you want to shout out.
I'm Rocky Gray. I am a film composer, a composer for the Killing Floor 2 video game, and a producer, director of the horror film 1031, a Halloween anthology. And I used to be in a bunch of rock bands back in the day, and now I've settled down and trying to get into the film world.
So let's talk about that transition really. And first of all, I got to tell you, man, you sound so good right now. Your audio is so good. It's like butter.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Great.
It's awesome. So let's talk about the transition. You were in a bunch of bands. Now you're going into film. Why? What happened? What's the deal? Just for anybody who doesn't know your story.
Well, I guess you get old and you want to kind of hang out with the kids and the wife and enjoy them while they're still young and can remember, who dad is. It's just kind of that thing that I feel like a lot of composers came from. They started out in the rock and roll and kind of made their way into the film world. Obviously, there was a love for film that whole time, but we were just in another game at the time. So it was kind of a natural progression into the doing film. I've always loved movies my whole life, so. Yeah, it was pretty easy transition. Once, you kind of have to decide you're going to settle down and not try to be a 45-year-old rock star. That's just not going to happen. So the sooner we realize that, the better.
Yeah, listen, man, I don't know the rock star life, but I know the film life, and
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I made it's you have to make a conscious decision, and I'd rather spend time in the out there in the workshop with our son than going out there, and trying to schmooze over booze, like it's a lot of fun, and it's more fun. And I think when your priorities change, I think you have to make that decision and that call. And I think that's really cool of you, man. That's an awesome kind of that's an awesome reason to do it. And that's an awesome move you've made. So,
Thanks,
and
man.
I know
Thank
that
you.
the film industry loves having you. So, you
it's
got a lot of
awesome.
loyal fans, and a lot of them are watching tonight, I hope. And it's really cool to have you on the show. So, what I'd like to talk to you about is composing. I'm not sure how much you know about the Indie Brigade or how much you follow the Indie Brigade, but what we try to do on here is we don't sit and fan out over you. We don't talk about all that stuff on here. What we talk about is stuff that our audience can learn from. Right.
Awesome.
We try to basically just have meaningful conversations about some challenges that we have when it comes to our jobs, challenges that we have when it comes to working with others, challenges that fall under the category of, say, composer, right, for tonight, and things about composing music for film. Let's start there. A lot of young independent filmmakers are out there licensing loops here and there and dropping them into scenes or finding, royalty free. And obviously that's going to come from a lack of budget or a lack of ability to go out and pay a composer. Everybody thinks, well, geez, of course I'd love to have a composer. I'd also love to have Fox's logo on my fucking, but
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that. And that's how a lot of these folks think. And that's how I thought for years. And, I'm kind of just spitballing some stuff here, but let's face it, at the end of the day, what do you say to filmmakers when it comes to composition? Let's kick it off. How do you want to start talking about this stuff? Because there's so much to cover, because we've got so much to teach these kids.
Right on.
That's whatever.
But how the conversation goes with the directors or the producers or whatever really has a lot to do with how much they've done before to get that kind of conversation started. If it's somebody brand new, it's there's a little more, walking them through how we're gonna, do this and how I need to receive the film, to make it work right and not have problems later. Let's attack as much up front as we can. And that way we're at least started on the right track, instead of that's not what they wanted at all. And, things like so many things can go wrong on especially a first time filmmaker. But the filmmakers that have been around, that kind of
That's a different story.
it's pretty easy to get things rolling, especially in the, I mainly concentrate on horror movies. So me and the directors usually are on the same page. We speak the same language. So it's pretty easy to get things done. And, having that same library of films we can, pull from, it's like, oh, I really want this part to be like some Return of the Living Dead, or, whatever it is. We can talk like that and know exactly where we're going with that cue or whatever.
Well, let's talk about speaking the language of composition a little bit between filmmaker and composer, because, a lot of us, we do that kind of stuff, man. Like, I love make this sound like Die Hard, or, and there's different ways to even say that, like, if you want, when you talk to a composer, it's the same thing when you talk to an actor. You want to, it's the same thing when you write a script that you want an actor to read. You don't want to go into a conversation with your composer saying, this is what I want it to be. You want to go in, at least when I talk to a composer. So if I was talking to you about composing a film, I would sit down with you And I would probably lead, start out the conversation by saying something like, I want it to feel, like I've got an upset stomach standing next to a tornado, right?
And I'd say, what?
Right? And then I would say, well, let's break that down.
Send me a reference for that, please.
And figure out what that means, like I want an uneasy feeling, right? And I would start, but that's, and does that work with you? I mean, does that sort of process work with you at talking about a feeling as opposed to coming in and saying, make it sound like this movie? Or, like what's the best way for you to kind of start these conversations with some of these? And if you have to lead a conversation with a first-time filmmaker who's never had the privilege of working with a composer before, how do you kind of guide them? How would you guide them into a conversation with you?
Yeah, it would really start out like, let me, after talking with them, if I really didn't feel like I knew where they were going with it, it would be, send me the script and let me look at that. And then also send me like a Spotify playlist of just what you feel like, not like this is the songs I want in the movie, but just like a mood playlist or something like that.
Yeah. And then what do you think when you listen to that playlist? How do you take yourself through the listening of something like that? What's your process?
I would take what they've told me and try to gauge what they're really saying. I mean, because sometimes they don't really know.
Right.
So it's like, you kind of have to fill in the blanks. It's like, well, the director's saying, I want to, this is the kind of vibe I'm going for, and here's the Spotify playlist. If those two kind of go together, then I can kind of pinpoint like, okay, I got this. Because maybe he's saying, man, I'm really inspired by J horror. And then there's The Grudge and The Ring in the playlist. I know where I'm going with this, not copying that, but getting the essence of what they're looking for.
Right.
Not necessarily take this and put it in the music, but just the essence of it, which is, I think that's a lot of what I do, is just getting the essence of a lot of things. I get a lot of, I really love that, 80s horror. I do a lot of like retro stuff, which I love doing that too. So it's not a problem, but it's capturing the essence of that stuff and not taking like that music and trying to just change it enough so it's not an exact replica of a song they wanted or something.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, just capturing the essence of those things.
It looks like we got a couple of questions up here for you. We got a couple of comments. Sun and Moon says, when approached, would you rather the filmmaker have a package list of the musical pieces they need, themes, or do you usually put together packages that you offer them to choose from? Let me try to figure that out. Package list of the musical pieces they need. Oh, I understand. Do you get it?
Like a reference list of here's all the stuff that I want to have in it. I have like playlists, Spotify playlist of my own stuff. If they want to hear some things from me or whatever, that usually doesn't happen. Usually if they're, asking me to do, they're asking me because they like what I do. So I normally don't have to do that too much. I mean, I've done it a couple of times but as far as a list of what they need, I mean, if the director has done stuff before, we usually know what's going to happen because we'll do like a cue sheet or something of what they're looking for, which that doesn't happen a lot either. Even with the directors that have been around, they still don't do the cue sheets or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them still don't give me final edits with time code either. So, which that's really helpful for the composers to have that stuff.
Like an edit list, like an EDL.
Yeah, just the cue sheet, because me and the director can't be in the same room and
Right.
spot the film together like you would normally do if we were, in Hollywood. Everybody just goes to a studio and spot the film together and, write down all the cues that, they're coming up with. So, I mean, we can't really do that. So,
Yeah.
but they can do a cue sheet, like time code, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Here's what I'm looking for.
Well, and you know what? That's an interesting thing to talk about too. Is for anybody like, well, Ron right here says that the one time he got to work with a composer, he told him what he was looking for, and he got something amazing. And that's it. That's the huge thing about it. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before. When you work with an actor, or you work with a cinematographer, or you work with a composer. I think a big mistake that a lot of young filmmakers make is they walk into the situation thinking, well, I'm the director and I've got to have all the answers, and that's not the case at all. Especially if you're lucky enough to get guys like Rocky to work with you. You're not a composer yourself, right? So you're not you don't go into, a surgery and tell the doctor how to do the operation, right?
Exactly.
You work with these people because you want to benefit from what they bring to it. Like when you write a script for actors to read, you don't put in there that, so-and-so washed his hands and dried his hands off with a blue towel using his left hand first. You don't put all that stuff in a script, right? It's the same thing when you work with a composer. You want your actors, you want your composers, you want your cinematographers, you want everybody that you bring to your project. You bring them for a reason, and you bring them for their own flair and their style, and you bring them to your project so they can bring themselves to your project. That's when you get the power of what guys like Rocky have to offer. That's when you empower people like Rocky to use their own voice to help tell your story. And I think that that's a huge message that I'm trying to get across with speaking with you tonight is, I'm just scrolling these questions real quick, but but that's a huge thing I'd like to get across. And how does that affect you? When you're more empowered to bring your own voice to a project, that's got to be a lot better for you, right? I mean, that rather than
totally
sound like this, right?
Yeah, it's a very freeing experience to be able to go through the film and me feel what I feel about it, and then see if that works out. And most of the time it does.
Yeah.
And for the times that it doesn't, let's get a reference for that, because maybe the director and I both are confused on it, what exactly is supposed to be there. I mean, sometimes the director has no idea what they want there.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a little difficult for me, because if I do something and it still doesn't work, there's no reference for the director to give me, unless they go find someone who's like, this is what I'm talking about. And it's probably nothing like either of us were thinking about.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know where you got that from, but we'll give that a shot.
Hey, Joe, are you here to remind me to tell everybody they're listening to the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade podcast with me, your host, George C. Romero, and my ever faithful and loyal and amazing producer, Joe Ridgely, and our guest, Rocky Gray, composer extraordinaire.
And also, if we don't acknowledge Lance, he's going to burst.
Oh, is he stomping his feet somewhere? Hi, Lance.
Lance Wagner.
Yes, he will have a cow.
There you go. Look at that.
Oh man, you guys are killing me with this shit. Like, I mean,
it's Lance's fault. It really is.
I just carry around a damn pot of coffee with me. I mean,
that's a good idea.
I mean, what else, Joe? What can we do for you?
Well, I was reading through some of these and
throw them up.
Long. The reason Sun and Moon was asking, reason I'm asking, if I was doing, say, a web series, then different characters might have a theme, like Leia's theme, Vader's theme, etc. And I would need strings for transitional elements.
So I might have a list put together of different places I need, or the flip side, that would be you already have packages. Oh, I understand what they're saying, what they're asking. So I just need to communicate the overview. So I guess that's a question, is that a common thing that you run into, where sort of filmmakers come to you and ask almost for like a menu and say, yo, do you have a hard drive full of like transitions? Do you have a hard drive of this kind of stuff that you can license to me? Is that something that you run into?
I haven't really gotten that. I haven't really gotten that before.
No.
It seems like I've been asked that a long time ago, but I don't know. I don't really do that. For the video game, I'll Killing Floor 2, I'll have some stuff kind of already ready, because I kind of know where I'm going with that. But
right.
On film, I mean, that can get pretty specific. So, I mean, I would rather write to your character instead of having a stock thing, because if it's a stock thing, you might have it, but 20 other people might have it too.
Very true. And that goes against what we talked about at the beginning. Yeah. So, okay, I got a question for you. What's the big difference between composing for a video game and composing for a movie? Which do you like better, and why?
They're both really different, and I really like doing the video game stuff just because it is so different from the film stuff. With the video game, I have a character, and they might give me 30 seconds of what this character does. Maybe that character has an intro that I even write the intro to, and then he has a action track, that plays while there's a battle or whatever. And in that video game, they're like monsters and stuff. So that fits right in with what I do. So all that stuff is, I'd say 90% of it is like pretty like brutal metal stuff. So I get to really go out and explore like electronic sounds and metal and mix them together. Whereas with a movie, I mean, that cue can change every single time something different happens in the same scene.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the video game, it's a song. It's 3 minutes of whatever I make happen. And I can make changes in there and, have peaks and valleys and, a regular song.
Sure.
It's nothing specific, because that's going to change every single time somebody plays it.
Yeah.
It'll never be the same.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
So Joe Castro says hi.
Hey.
And then, we've got a comment here from Eric. As a newcomer with strict budget, how does a newcomer with a strict budget get a great composer or project selected on interest or fee? So this is an interesting question, and I'd like to. What's up, Joe? Thank you for joining us, brother. And I would like to kind of just talk about that real quick, because do you take on jobs? And maybe this is a loaded question to kind of be asking you on a live broadcast, and if you don't want to get into it, I get it. I'm not asking you for your rates or anything, but are there projects that somebody can come to you and you'll take a look at it, and maybe you believe in the project so much that you're more willing to work with them? Or is it like flat fee, like, no, this is my rate, or tell your story, walk in? I'm just curious, how that works.
It really runs the gamut. I mean, I still do stuff for nothing. I mean, if it just depends on, I hate to say just how much I want to do it and how much they can afford. If I want to do it and they can afford it, I'll just tell them, dude, I'm just going to do this, I mean, as long as they, they want me, I'll be like, I really want to do this project. I know you can't afford to do it, and I don't want to pass it up. So
that's cool as shit, man. I find myself working with a lot of young filmmakers that I just believe in,
Right.
You know,
Right.
and like if they've got a project that I believe in, you know, Joe says composers have to recreate the movie entirely with music when they get it in their hands. And he's right. You do.
Yeah,
I mean, there's, you know, like the whole idea that I learned when I was young and coming up is that I need to be able to watch a movie with dialogue and music, and then I need to be able to watch the movie with no dialogue and just music. I need to be able to watch the movie with no music and just dialogue, and I need to be able to watch the movie with no audio and just visuals and see if I get the story I'm trying to tell. Right.
Yeah.
And so as a filmmaker, whenever I do anything, that's part of my process. I watch it completely front to back with no sound period. And then I watch it with all the varying different pieces of sound, you know, and if I'm satisfied that I've told the story the same way or essentially complementary through the whole process, then I feel like it's time to move on to the next phase of it, you know. And, you know, I guess there's an interesting question for you. You know, how much of storytelling do you feel, how much storytelling do you feel that you get in with the music? So, you know, how do you use music to tell an audio story as opposed to complementing the story that's in front of you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's the hard part. I think that's where the composer did a good job, or they just did a job. I mean, when you can back up the story with the music, I think that's where it's at. I mean, because I could easily go in and go, this is what I want on this part, and it has nothing to do with what's going on with the dialogue or action or whatever. That sucks.
Yeah.
Whatever I do needs to go with the story on screen. Because, I mean, if they don't go together,
right,
it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen examples.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and name any of them because we at the Indie Brigade don't take sides. So we got a couple of other things here. Let's see what's here. Sound and picture to me are equally important. That's basically what we were just saying. So you know, it's sad that an audience can forgive less than a stellar. I don't think it's sad. I think you know, it's complimentary. If the right sound and the right music can take your mind off some shortcomings that the visuals might have, you know. And is that a challenge you've run into before, Rocky? Is that something where you've had to kind of like really kind of overcome some visual shortcomings with audio and try to distract the viewer from that? You know, I think it's an interesting thing.
Working with some, I guess you might say, a lackluster like production visually, I don't think you can save that, because it's still about the story. The story is that's the ride you're on. And now if you have some awesome visuals, then that's just all the better. But I don't know if you can save it. You think there's a level,
like if it's not at least this good, like don't bother.
I mean, I can only do so much. I mean, we'll throw all the polish we can on it, but
yeah. Well, and polish goes a long way, though, man.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. But I think that's where the story comes in. If you got a story and people are in it, they can forgive a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're in it with you.
And audio can help that. I mean, you know, from good dialogue, good recording, good sound design, good, you know, atmospherics, all that stuff. But a good score can really pull people out of some shortcomings. You know, it can really immerse them, I think, in the conversation that's happening between the screen and the audience. Because at the end of the day, that's really what a film is. It's conversation between the screen and the audience.
Yeah, if you can get the audience in there, that's where it's at.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Funding and editors seem to be the most important part of filming What Happened to Telling a Story, Beatrice. You know, that's kind of what we're talking about. You know, I mean, for us, it's more about the passion behind the story, the passion behind the person creating the story, and how much they believe in what they're trying to do. You know, I mean, I know I get approached by people who are just trying to make a buck, man, and they're just like, hey, you know, get on my movie. And, but I don't have any money to pay you. And it's like, nah, it's not because I'm being a dick. It's because I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm not feeling it from the person, or I'm feeling more of like wanting to be famous vibe rather than I have to put this in the world or I'm going to go insane,
Yeah.
And, I think that goes back to something you said earlier, to just circle back on, you said a lot of times you'll do it just because you believe in it and because you just want to do it. I think that's a common thing for us creatives, right? I think it gets to a point where if you actually get invested, and this was where a good script comes in, good visuals come in. If you want to reach out to somebody like Rocky with a project, you have to think about him as your 100% of your audience, right? If you want him to watch or read your thing, you've got to make sure that you're going to pull him in and make him want to care about your project. And I think that's the number one thing. And I think that most of the people who tune into the Indie Brigade are on that page. Joe's back.
Well, yeah.
Thank God it's Joe.
Well, no. Joe Castro definitely want to work with Rocky. That'd be
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. Well, let's make that happen.
Let's do that.
Happen right here on the Indie Brigade. Boom.
So, unfortunately, it's that time. We're going to have Rocky on again if you join us again.
Let's do that.
And please get him an invite to the community, and please be in the conversation, man. We're proud to have you here.
Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
I'm going to put you full screen, plug what you got going on, and tell us where we can find you on social media.
Right on, man. All right. Rocky-Gray.com has pretty much everything on there. I'm on Facebook all the time, so y'all hit me up.
All right. We really appreciate you coming on, man, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
That was cool.
That was very cool. Rocky's an awesome guy. He's super talented, and he's in the game, and he's in the conversation, and he does it for the right reasons, and that's what I love. So I'm really happy and excited we got to have him on the show.
All right. So now,
what show is that, Joe? Why don't you tell people what we're listening to, Joe?
That would be the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade Season 2 finale with your host, George C. Romero, and me, Joe Ridgely. Take a drink. You look parched.
Oh, I was so thirsty. I'm tired. I'm just going to stretch.
It is 9:45, and your next guest is here. Please feel free to introduce him while I bow out.
Mr. Brian Herskowitz, how are you tonight?
I'm good, George. How are you?
I'm good. Your audio is super low.
Let me see. Let me see if I can do about that. Hold on a second. Anything I can do here? Hold on. Don't go away. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah.
A little better?
Hello?
Okay. I'll speak up.
Okay. Yeah. How you been, man? It's good to see your face and talk to you.
Yeah, been good. Been busy.
Yeah, I know you have been.
Working harder, making less.
That's the whole point, right? That's how it goes now. The older we get. Listen, before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell everybody what you're about. We're all very lucky that Brian is here to talk with us tonight. So listen up.
Well, thank you. The introduction will probably take longer than the rest of the evening, but my name is Brian Herskowitz. I'm the CCO of a startup company called Crypto Film Fund, which is a film financing entity that's just starting up. For 5 years, I worked with the Horror Equity Fund doing a similar thing. I'm a writer, producer, director primarily. Been teaching screenwriting for the last 3 decades or so, and work right now with Boston University's Writer in Hollywood program here in Los Angeles. Been doing that for about 15 years. What else? I worked in television extensively as a writer, producer, and now independent features. And that's me.
Boom. So we've got a legitimate, bona fide, verified screenwriter with experience and an actual screenwriting teacher with us tonight. So everybody listen the fuck up.
That's right.
So, Brian,
speak up
a little
more if you could, please.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
So, Brian, let's get into this. Let's get started. We've got a lot of young filmmakers in the Indie Brigade. We've got a lot of young screenwriters in the Indie Brigade, and we've got a lot of working professionals in the Indie Brigade. And to sort of welcome you in and welcome you into the mentor program, because Brian is now going to be our screenwriting mentor. which I'm very proud of.
Thrilled.
I kind of want to just kind of break it down and talk about the different kinds of screenplays. I want to talk just kind of like very cursory introduction to, what would you say to some folks maybe who are watching who have maybe never written a screenplay before, but they've had their idea, they can't get it out of their head, and it's time for them to write it, and maybe being part of the Indie Brigade has inspired them to try to sit down and write some stuff. What's the first thing you would tell a new writer?
Well, the first thing I would say is you want to educate yourself, whether it's reading screenplays, watching movies, getting books on screenwriting. Not that I'm plugging anything, but just saying you want to educate yourself, because unlike a novel, there's a certain form and function to a screenplay that has historically been the same for the last 100 years, and there have been shifts in the way that story is created. That's the one. I find that a very good book.
It is a very good book. I've read it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things you want to do is you want to learn the form and the function of the story, and then you want to get that out of your way and just tell a good story. And honestly, good story to me, people get kind of messed up with the idea of a 3-act structure or the hero's journey or 5-act structure. Now I'm hearing people talk about, and that's all great. Nothing wrong with it. You should learn it. You should know it. But ultimately, you have a story. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and the rest is just filler. So you're looking at, what is my story about? Why do I want to tell this story? What I heard you mention just a second ago to Rocky that it's a conversation. A film is a conversation with the audience, and I believe that 100%. So part of it is, how are you communicating with your audience? What are you telling them that you feel like they need to know? And what is it that you want them to know walking out the theater? So those are things that I want initially when you're first looking at what do I write. That's one of the things you want to look at. I think a lot of writers, the first thing that comes to mind is I have a great idea. It's a life experience thing. I've done this, this happened to me, and it's a true story. And that's great as a starting place. But oftentimes the stories that we find the most intriguing in our lives are pretty boring to the general public. You have to have some imagination of what is it, why is it that someone is going to pay 15, 17 bucks or go to Hulu or go to Amazon or go to Netflix and sit down and spend 2 hours of their lives watching this story. And those are the things you want to kind of take in. And then when you find kind of study the structure and the form, you're able to put it into a container. And it allows you to kind of have a through line that allows an audience member to kind of get the picture that you're trying to send them.
One of the things that I say to people when they ask me about screenwriting, and I'm almost a little nervous to tell you this because I don't want you to be like, no, you suck. But I tell people when they're just starting out, you just get it down front to back. A lot of people that I run into, they say, well, I started writing and then I got to page 10 and then I went back and I wanted to rewrite that. And then I got to page 8 and I went back and I started over and I started over and I started over. I rewrote. I tell everybody, just write it front to back, get it down, get it out front to back, tell your story, and then rewrite, because rewriting is easier than writing.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, George.
Fuck, goddamn.
No, actually, that's exactly right. In fact, in my book and in a class I used to teach with Writers Boot Camp for many years, one of the things that they talk about is there's a technique which I really think is terrific called it's short scene conflict writing. And the idea is that all story moves forward in short scenes filled with conflict. And the idea is you sit down and you put your story first in an outline form, or actually first just kind of in a beat sheet, then an outline form. Then when you sit down to write it, you only write what you know, and you write from beginning to the end as quickly as you can, but not you don't want to forget anything that's inspirational. But what you don't want to do is stop, go back, and try and start over. You do want to get the story down as much as you can, and then at your leisure you go back and you start to look at what do you need, what don't you need, what makes the story work, what's just wasting time, what's going to be exciting for people to watch. Those are the things that you want to look at as you're going through the process of just starting out. And I highly recommend, and not every writer does this, but I highly recommend that the more time you spend on your story, on your outline, on your beat sheet, understanding where you want to go once you start writing, the easier the writing process is, and the less likely that you're going to get lost on the path. And I know this sadly from experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting you're talking about getting lost on the path. I just want to, there's a couple of people putting some stuff up here. I got to adjust my glasses so that I can read them because I'm old now.
Don't get me started, George.
What software do you recommend? I'm a Final Draft guy.
Yeah, I think that's the industry standard. Celtics is or Celtic. Is it Celtic or Celtic? Celtic.
I'm not sure. I hear both.
I think it's supposed to be Celtic, but
yeah,
I'll call either way. But they call the Boston Celtics, so I don't know.
Yeah, none of that makes any sense.
Yeah, they don't call it Boston Celtics. But anyway, Celtics is a fine, free option for a lot of people, but it's not the industry standard. Nor is Movie Magic Screenwriter. It's really Final Draft is kind of the king of the hill. Doesn't mean you can't use and have other functionality from other software. The first screenplay I wrote back when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, I was handwriting scripts, and then I went from handwriting to a manual typewriter, then to an electric typewriter, then to a Commodore 64 computer, then and all of that was done without software. And one of the great things that software does is page breaks, putting your name at the bottom of the page and then having it come back alive on the next page was a miracle as far as I was concerned. Because in the past, when you changed a line on page 3, you had to retype everything.
Yeah.
So the computer software is a real boon. And yeah, I think Final Draft is the way to go.
Yeah, me too. For me, what it does is it takes a lot of people get hung up on the formatting. Mm-hmm. And and they think, oh, I have to go here and it's a whole process. Final Draft removes all of that for me, and it's just
most of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like it allows me to flow a lot better when I'm writing. I don't think about it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's a huge boon for the writer. It really is, because what formatting does, it doesn't change whether you've written a good story or not. And it doesn't change whether it's a wonderful idea or that an audience is going to love it. But what it does do is it speaks to professionalism. So when I give a script to someone, if it's not properly formatted, they're less likely to read it. And if they do read it, they're less likely to give into it, because they're going to look at it and go, well, this isn't a professional writer. I'm wasting my time and I'm not going to go further with it. So it's a very important small part of the process, but it's important.
Yeah, it really is. We've got a question up here that I want to talk some more screenwriting with you. I've got one more question that I want to ask you about before I kind of get into this, but here's a question for you. I was once told by a guy that taught me a lot about screenwriting that you want as much white space in your script as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe you could, first of all, tell me if you agree or disagree with that. And second of all, explain what that is and why to some of our.
First of all, yes. The kind of the general rule of thumb is you want a lot of white space. And what that means is you don't want to have huge blocks of prose. So when you go to describe a scene, you don't want to have 5 paragraphs of dense text talking about what's happening. You want to break it up on the page. So even if you don't break it up with dialogue, if you have a big action sequence, you want to break it up by taking 3 or 4 lines, finding a natural break in the action, whether it's one person is doing something and then you go to another part of the room and somebody else is doing something different. You want to separate that out, give a blank space in between. So the rule of thumb generally is about no more than 6 lines in a paragraph before you break it. And it really has to do, for me, it's more about where's the natural flow. You're talking about the flow of it. Where's the natural point where I go, this idea now ends and something else is happening, and I want to give people, make it easier on their eyes to read. And that's really the reason they do that. You want to have dialogue, broken by action, and action broken by dialogue, and that keeps the white space fairly clear and clean on the page.
Next big thing I want to touch on with you, and this is because this is a big pet peeve of mine when people send me scripts.
Yeah.
The difference between a reader script and a director script, and why you don't send director scripts, and why you don't send, kind of what I was talking about earlier with actors too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to put all of the screen direction in your script, right?
And even a bigger issue for actors is the parentheticals. The Rileys. Telling an actor exactly how they should say the line oftentimes ticks actors off. They want the freedom to kind of help to create the story and have their input. So, telling them, when you start to micromanage in any way, whether it's an actor, a director, or producer, telling them exactly, you want to put everything that you want to see or hear in your screenplay. But when it gets to opinions of how it should be done, you don't put in camera angles, you don't put in direction, you don't put in close up tight, you don't edit. You let the editor do that, let the director do that, let the actors do the acting. You write what you want to see and hear. The only time that I feel like that is, a rule that you should go off of is when it is absolutely imperative for your vision that you have to explain it. You have to give clarity to, I have an idea of how this person needs to read this. And if I don't do that, there's a good chance they'll go the other direction. And I want to make sure that they understand this is sarcastic, or I want to make sure that they understand that I have to have a close up on this item. That's the only time to do it. And even that, I believe a lot of times a good writer, a facile writer, will be able to guide you to those moments without you having to say extreme close up. So if I say, he looks at the drop of blood on his right small fingernail, I know that the director is going to have to get a shot that's pretty close in order to see that fingernail. I don't have to tell him extreme close up on the hand. That's not my job. My job is to write the story. So that's another thing that, I tend to agree with that. And there are writers that break that all the time. There are writers that, in fact, all the rules.
Yeah. Well, that's the best part about writing, right? The God complex that goes with it.
Yeah, exactly.
When I write things that I know I'm going to direct, Abram says, "Hi, what's up?" We've got, and then I'm going to transition into a couple of these questions here, because they're going to transition our conversation a little bit. But if I know I'm going to direct what I'm writing, or it's something that I'm going to fight for the director's chair for, I write a director's script, and I do that because I'm more interested in furthering the conversation with my crew. I learned the hard way with the parentheticals and the Rileys and stuff a long time ago when I had a bunch of them in a script, and every time one of my actors would see it, he would try to do the opposite. Just so if I said whispers, he would yell, and he basically broke me of that because I didn't want to fucking deal with it.
Yeah, I'm married to an actress, and one of the first things she would do is, if there were a lot of parentheticals, she takes a pen and she crosses them out.
Yeah.
So that, but on the other hand, there's a time at which if you want your work a certain way and it's not clear to the people that are doing it, if you are not clear, they're going to do it the way they want.
Right.
They may do it anyway, but at least if you say to them whispering or quietly, or they may take that under consideration. But it's a very different thing when you're writing for yourself to direct, or you're writing, it's something that you're going to have control over, whether it's funding or directing or producing. That's a different issue. It's when you're trying to get people, that third party out there, to get on board with you. And that's when you start running into trouble, because as you start to try and direct in your screenplay, another director is going to be potentially turned off. So that's why generally you have a reader script and you have a shooting script.
Right. And what's important about all the stuff we're talking about for anybody who's listening is, every filmmaker gets to a point where they've got it's no longer just them and their camera and their friends. And you get to a point where you've got to attract people to collaborate with you, and you've got to get people behind your vision. Directing, screenwriting and directing are very similar in that fashion. When you're writing a screenplay, you've got to make people want to get into your story. You've got to pull them into the page. When you're directing a film, you've got to make everybody who reads that script want to help you get your vision of that script across. And that's another interesting point to touch on really quickly here, is that, a lot of writers get pretty butthurt when they don't realize that when a director is hired to direct their script, they're not necessarily hired to direct it word for word. They're hired
Right.
to be the director.
Right.
And, maybe that's a little something you could offer a little bit of advice on,
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's kind of a truism is very few scripts go out of a computer and onto the screen the way they were written. And it's very telling that the Writers Guild allows for a director to make a fairly significant contribution to a script without getting credit as a writer. So when a director comes on, it's expected that they're going to change the script. They're going to make choices. They're going to adapt, and it's out of your hands at a certain point. You don't have that. You don't have any say in whether or not the director does it. It's their ship at that point. And hopefully you have somebody who's collaborative, who's honoring your intentions. But again, you don't have any real choice in that matter. And the fact of the matter is, once you've written your script and somebody else has bought it, it's theirs. They get to do what they want with it. And again, if you've written a solid script and it's clear, chances are the director is going to see the vision that you had and is going to honor that. I don't think many directors will take on a script with the idea of, hey, I know this is an idea that is okay, and I'm going to take it and change it on set. But having said that, I have run into directors who have tried to do that, and I find it's not a good way to go.
It's not, but I've been in situations where scripts have changed so much on the fly on set, man, it's not even funny. And
Sure.
it could come from anything. It could come from the fact that your AD looks at you and says, well, the generator didn't show up today.
You always have to be on the set. You always have to be ready to adapt. I've been on shoots and directed and produced things where suddenly we lost a location, or the person who we thought was going to allow us to shoot has said, no, you can't shoot here unless you pay me $10,000. And you go, well, okay, what's next? What do we do? How do we get out of this? So
Yep.
you always have to be willing to adapt, and that's a production issue. As a writer, that's the furthest thing from your mind. It should be one of the furthest things from your mind. That happens on the set, and you can't bitch about that as a writer. That's not your job.
Right. Yeah. So I want to address a couple of these questions here because I want to transition. And here's fucking Joe again to remind me to probably say something like, everybody, we're listening to Romero Pictures Indie Brigade podcast with me, your host, George C. Romero, and producer extraordinaire, Joe Ridgely. We're speaking with Brian Herskowitz right now, the brand new Indie Brigade screenwriting mentor, screenwriting professor at Boston University, and author of screenwriting books, extraordinaire. Fucking, he's an amazing guy. He's one of the smartest guys I know. Here you go. Yeah. Buy this book, and we're going to give you a chance to tell everybody where to go get this book, and we'll put a link to this book up on your mentor page as well. But we've got a question here, and this transitions into the next topic with you. What do you do? This is Eric Mathis. What do you do to get green lights when you have the story and the pros all love it, but you have little content behind you? How do you get that second look? Now, I think what he's saying is, sort of how do you get people to revisit if they've maybe said no, right?
Yeah, so that's tough because a lot of times you get one shot with a company, with a producer, with an entity. Beyond that, how do you get people to return is you address what issues they have. So if a producer says to you, hey, I love this script, but I think it should be a donkey instead of a horse, and you don't want to make it a donkey, you're not going to get that script made there. So you have to be willing to listen to the notes. One of the things that I would caution you against as a writer is listening to everybody's notes. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're listening to people who, one, understand writing and understand the process, and two, that they intend to do something if you address their issues. Because here's what happens. A lot of times as a writer, you want to please people. So you have 20 different people giving you 20 different notes, and you can't literally do them all because you may have one person who says, make it funnier. And the next person says, no, it's, it's too funny. It needs to be more serious. Well, what do you do? So one of the things that happens and that I kind of preach is that when you're looking at how do you adjust the script and improve it, two things you want to do, or three things. One is you want to listen to your heart first and foremost. When you read the script yourself, do you get to a place where you're bumped? Do you feel like it's not quite working? Are the characters as true and as honest and as real as you want them to be? Is every minute moving the story forward? All of those things. Then the other thing is consensus. If you give it to somebody and they say, it sucks, I hate it, I wouldn't waste my time with it, and that's not very helpful. If somebody says to you, well, I think it should be French, and somebody else says, I think it should be English, now you have a little bit more to work with. Then if you get to three people who say, I think it should be English, and the one person who says France, you go, well, you know what? Three people now have mentioned this moment, this idea, this concept. Maybe there's something there that's missing because there's an audience that has read it and it said to me, there's a problem here. So you want to make sure that if there's a reason that they pass, that you can address it. The other thing is, if you can find out why they passed.
Right, and don't be precious.
Yeah, it's not about it's not about ego at that point. You got to make sure that they're telling you exactly what is it that they did or didn't like, and if you made those changes, talk to them. Say, if I made these changes, would you be interested in taking another look? And if they say yeah, that's your in. Once you've connected with anybody, a producer, a director, and you've given them a piece of work, it's no longer unsolicited.
So now I'm gonna pivot on you, and
Sure.
because we've only got a few minutes, but I want to pivot on you and ask you, as from the funding side of things, because this is another hat that Brian wears, and it's really interesting to meet a writer who also is involved with getting films funded. So, as somebody who funds movies and gets movies funded, how likely are you? Seriously, no bullshit with all the advice you just gave everybody.
Right.
Like, how likely are you to give a script a second shot, and how likely are you to say, look, here's why I'm passing, but if you do this, you can bring it back to me, because there's 50-50. People will do that and some won't.
It depends on how good the first read is, honestly. If it's a script where you go, God, this is just, I'll give you an example. I recently had a guy come to me with a screenplay that he wanted me to produce, and it was very good. It was really good. But it had some structural issues and some character problems that I felt needed to be addressed. And I talked to the writer and said, don't know if you want my 2 cents worth, but here they are. And he said, you know what? I don't want your 2 cents worth. Well, I couldn't go any further with that script. If he had made those adjustments, I think I probably could have gone forward and said, okay, now I can take it to this company. I think there's maybe a home here. We can start to push it. But it really depends on how far afield it is. And also, there are different kind of compartments for any story. There's the concept and the idea, which can be terrific and then fail on the execution. It could be, an exciting idea that is well executed, but doesn't for some reason, work for the zeitgeist of the world at the moment. There are different things that go into the mix in terms of whether or not something is, in my estimation, when I start to look at it, commercially viable. So a lot of that goes into the mix. But ultimately, if I like the script, but I feel like there's problems with it, I'll always take another look. If a writer comes back to me and says, hey, I worked on, I'm doing another project right now with a guy in North Carolina, wrote a screenplay. And one of the things that he's done, which is pretty clever, is he's gone and gotten intellectual property. So he bought a series of books. He bought an old movie, rights to an old movie. He does that kind of thing. And he's not a bad writer. He's written a script, very good. But there are things that I go, okay, this needs to be tweaked. He's incredibly willing to do so. I've looked at drafts, 3 or 4 drafts from him. And I'm going to be working with him on something. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get it funded.
Right.
Unfortunately, the sad thing is, until I have, a lot of cash in my pocket, I have to rely on the kindness of strangers as well. So that right now is part of what Crypto Film Fund is trying to do, is put together literally a film fund that allows us to go out into the independent world, pick projects and take them to the market. And one of the things that they're doing that's a little bit different is they're tokenizing the investment, which then makes it a little bit more. Oh, you just went dark.
What happened?
Okay, George, you went dark. Okay. You tokenize the investment, and that allows you in some way to have a little more liquidity. So it's an exciting time for investors if we can get past the coronavirus.
You know, this thing is going nuts with people financing, not pulling the trigger. It's killing so much stuff in the indie world. You know, there's another question here that I want to jump to from Sun and Moon that is, and it's a good question. Wait, where did it just go?
I'll be the judge of that.
On the funding side of things, what have you seen as being the most comforting things to potential investors, which have to be there for them to take a serious look at a project, say top 3? In other words, you know, when you look at projects for funding, do you want filmmakers to have this stuff already lined up? Budget, teaser, what is the most powerful stuff for a filmmaker to come to you armed with?
Let me start with the script, because if it's not a great script, no matter what other bells and whistles you have, it's an uphill battle. Doesn't mean that bad films don't get produced or that bad scripts don't get made, but it makes it much more difficult. So the next step is, what other bells and whistles are in place? Do you have a budget? Is it an accurate budget? Is it produced by a professional who can really stand behind those numbers? What kind of a team have you put together, if any? Do you have other elements? Do you have a star attached? Do you have a director attached? Do you have a producer attached that has some credits? All of those things matter. And you can take a good script and elevate it to producible. You can't take a bad script and elevate it to producible. The other thing, the budget is important, but more important than that is understanding what your film's kind of audience is going to be and how much of a return you're potentially going to make on a film. So if I do a $500,000 horror film and I maybe get one pseudo name in it, I'm going to have a better shot of getting a return on my investment than if I do a very internalized drama about two people, sitting at dinner and talking amongst themselves. And that's the Jim Jarmusch, Henry Jaglom type of film, where if you know what your audience is, you can still make a living at that. But you got to know who your audience is. But the main thing is the script, and then everything else kind of falls into place after that. But it is important to know the budget. I've had a lot of writers come to me and say, this is a film we could do for $200,000 or $25 million.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's true. You can do almost anything for, nothing or everything, depending on, but can you do it well? And how much money is going on the screen and how much is, going in people's pockets? Are you really going to put those numbers up? So
right.
That's important.
Yeah.
Hello, Joe. What's up?
Unfortunately, it's that time again, gentlemen.
Hey, well, I will slowly fade into the sunset.
No, please don't. We want you to talk about what you've got going on, where people can find you outside the mentor program, and talk about your book, and maybe just we're going to throw you full screen. Maybe just talk a little bit about your what you've got going on and where we can find you.
Well, right now you can find me at Brian at cryptofilmfund.io. That's the company that I'm working with right now. And you can also find me at brianherskowitz.com. That's my website, which once every 7 or 8 years I'll make a change on. So don't get too attached. The book, Process to Product, is really kind of a guide from concept and idea through to finished script. So whether you're a beginner or you're a professional, seasoned professional, and you want a little guidance, it takes a little bit of my theories and my many years of teaching and puts it together, hopefully so that it's understandable to an audience. And that's what's going on there. As a writer producer, I'm continuing to write and do stuff. I just finished a short film, which I hope will be coming out and getting into the world soon. I'm hoping to make it a short content series on a Quibi type platform. So I'm working on that. I have a horror film I'm trying to put together with Crypto Film Fund that we may be shooting down in Colombia, and I hope to direct that. And I'm novelizing a couple of my scripts. So that's whole nother discussion. But that's what I'm doing. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me at brian@cryptofilmfund.io.
And Brian will be up on our mentor program as soon as possible. So we're going to have a lot of that stuff up there by Monday. So stay tuned, come back. And Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking to everybody tonight.
I hope you'll have me back again, ready to talk just about any time.
We'll do it. We'll do it. Have a great night, man.
Got to settle more time. Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Chock full of information, no doubt about it. And probably could have gone on for another hour easily.
Easily. Brian's an amazing guy, and he's got a lot of knowledge to drop on folks. So
let's see. Brian definitely enjoyed this talk. I mean, yes, people were definitely listening. So, all right, on that a little. So you have, George, tell people what they're listening to and introduce your next guest, please.
Right now, everybody's listening to the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade podcast with your host, me, George C. Romero, ever faithful and producer extraordinaire. On the screen with me, Mr. Joe Ranchley. And coming up on the screen right now is another very dear longtime friend of mine, Mr. Bryce Campbell. Bryce, how are you?
I'm good, man. What's going on?
Man, it's so good to see your face and talk to you. We talk on the phone so much, and I don't get to see you like we did when I was living in LA, and I miss you, man. You look great.
Oh, thanks, brother. You do too. And I miss you too, man. It's been too many years.
It's been interesting. It's been an interesting bunch of years, I think, for both of us.
A few more gray hairs or,
Yeah. Well, I think you've had a lot of those for a while, but it looks good on you, man. You got that Steve Martin thing going, but I love it.
Thanks.
Listen, Bryce, what I want to talk, hopefully you've had enough time to kind of check things out and see how we do this here tonight. The Indie Brigade it's not your typical podcast. We do shit like we drop stuff to people who want to pay attention that they can't get answers to anywhere. We talk about the things that people bang their heads against the wall wondering, how do I fucking learn how to do this? And we do it for free. We because I believe that this shit needs to be in the world and people need to learn things that they, not everybody can afford to go to film school or figure out what, this knowledge is not stuff that's readily available in the industry, and that's one of the things that I'm excited to talk to you about because of your background and your career in distribution. I mean,
banging my head against walls.
Yeah, but doing it from the other side of the desk.
Yeah, I'm an old expert at banging my head against a wall and trying to figure out why things aren't working.
Well, I wonder if maybe you wouldn't mind first of all, introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about your background, but then if you could kind of just go into basically breaking down the different types of distribution from, just give everybody like a 60,000 foot view. I'm going to give you the full screen for like a full, minute and a half.
Oh my God, don't torture people like that.
Huh?
I said, don't torture people by giving me a full screen.
Absolutely. Do it. Just tell everybody, like, what are the different types of distribution models from, foreign to DVD to the whole thing. And I just want you to kind of give everybody just an overview, because a lot of people, the biggest problem that so many people in the brigade have, Bryce, is they don't know what to do with their movie once it's done.
Yeah, I'd say, honestly, that is the biggest problem that most people have. Not just the Indie Brigade and not just independent filmmakers. There's a lot of people. When I got into distribution years ago, I realized that most producers, most actors, everybody in the industry have no idea what distribution actually is. And, it's kind of the ugly stepchild that, it's like, oh, it's that distribution. Yeah, that thing. Marketing is, God and, and filmmaking and blah, blah, blah. But everybody needs distribution, otherwise your product doesn't actually get seen or make money. And yet very few people actually understand what anybody in distribution actually does or what it means. And so it's not just an independent problem. It's a problem that's pervaded throughout the entire industry.
So why don't we start with that? Why don't you explain what distribution is? Let's start there. First of all, tell everybody.
First I'm going to tell everybody who I am.
Yeah.
Because you asked me to. So my name is Bryce Campbell, and I actually started, co-founded Creative Alley Productions back in 2000, independent production company with my partner, Christian Kyber. And we'll get to where that's going now, but we're actually in the process of transitioning the production company into a full-fledged studio and distributing films ourselves. And we're going from Creative Alley Productions to Creative Alley Pictures. And I'm very excited about it. But after a few years of independent producing and not making a ton of money out of it and still having to wait tables or 10 bar or whatever it is, I turned to Christian one day and said, well, why the hell are we not making any money? Like, what do we do? And how do we get to this whole distribution thing? And so I was fortunate enough to get on the ground floor and very small, very entry-level position at Miramax, which has turned into a career and expanded. And from Miramax, I went to Open Road. And then from Open Road, I went to, Global Road, Open Road, Global Road. And then from there, I have actually consulted for a few other companies. And now, again, I am expanding Creative Alley, and we're going to start doing it ourselves.
Fuck yeah, you are.
Yeah,
so,
man.
What are you drinking on over there? That looks delicious.
That might be a scotch.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Well, you know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's 5 o'clock everywhere. The people are, but look, there's Joe. He's agreeing. Listen, when you told me what you're getting into now, I got super excited because, as you know, we're actually working on doing some distribution label type stuff. And I'm very excited that you've decided to jump into the Brigade, man, and become part of the fold. Oh, there's my wife. Hello, Bryce. I don't know if you remember her from when we were out in LA. I think you guys met briefly.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, that's my wife.
Very nice to meet you again.
Yeah.
So sweet. That's a nice little pop up.
Yeah, she's the best thing that ever happened to me, man. I'll tell you what.
Oh God, I know.
Yeah, I forget. You've been my for a long time. So let's start maybe by trying to demystify
distribution.
Yeah, let's demystify that a little bit for some folks.
Sure. I mean, distribution is just kind of the label and the part of the industry that we put on how your movie makes money is basically all it boils down to. And there's several different routes of distribution. There's theatrical, and that can be theatrical in the US, or that can be theatrical worldwide, or that can just be theatrical in Brazil or wherever. And then there's what we call the ancillary markets, which are VOD, DVD, for as long as that lasts. The digital markets, the Netflix, the free TV, the HBOs, all that fun stuff. Like all that kind of gets lumped into one great big category called ancillary, which can be an extremely lucrative part of the business. So certainly not something to turn your nose up at. I know that, most everybody wants to go theatrical. There's that experience of seeing your movie or, project in the theaters. And believe me, it's amazing. And you definitely want to do that. But, not every project is necessarily suited for it, but so I personally think that and the advice I give to every filmmaker, is basically be honest with yourself what your film is. Not every film, not every project, not everything you do is actually suited to be seen in a theater. And if you're honest with yourself from the get-go, then you aren't disappointed later on, and you make smarter decisions as you're going into production and as you're casting your actors and as you're pretty much every aspect of your production is influenced by you being honest with yourself where your film's going to end up.
Well, that's actually a really good point to bring up, you know, and I think that that's something that a lot of people, and it's an interesting point to mention on tonight's episode, because I think you're also a writer. We've written together, and you're a phenomenal writer. And, you know, I think you've got such a unique perspective because you do write and you're involved with the beginning and the creation of the story, and you're also involved with putting it out into the world. So, you know, I mean, I think in terms of trying to explain to folks that, you know, most films aren't really going to be theatrical films these days. If you really think about it, there's not, I don't know. Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong at all. I mean, like,
there's thousands of movies made every year. There's thousands of movies being made, and there's maybe 100 of them that hit theaters, right? I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, the numbers kind of vary, obviously, but like, you know, honestly, theatrical is an amazing thing to have happen. And I think there's space for more than what gets out there. Leading a little bit into why I'm doing what I'm doing, but like, you know, not every film deserves to go theatrical, but every film can find an audience. And, you know, with the advent of Netflix and Quibi even, and, you know, all these different online platforms, some of the best stuff going right now is coming out on these platforms direct. And, you know, they're edgy, they're interesting, and it gives a wider audience to your film. You know, whether that's here in the States or Canada or worldwide or wherever you're seeing it. And again, like, a lot of people tend to turn their nose up, unless it's like Netflix, which everybody, you know, just acknowledges is amazing and they'd love to get a Netflix deal, and who wouldn't? But, you know, you kind of turn your nose up a lot of times when you're like, oh, well, that's just online. But, you know, honestly, there's a lot of ways to reach your audience. And if you're honest with yourself and you make smart decisions early on, those online platforms can be amazing. And, you know, and give yourself a greater audience reach than just trying to go after that theatrical, because it is hard to get a theatrical release, and it is hard to get a distribution company to put the money behind a theatrical release, because going theatrical is expensive. You know, no matter what you spent on production, for a company to take it out theatrically, that's, you know, a couple $1 million at least, and that's, you know, like on the bare minimum. And a lot of times that means that, you know, what they spend, they're going to make back before you're going to see any money. So you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to force the theatrical release when you could go to a streaming service, or you could go VOD or whatever and start making money back faster.
Well, and that rolls right into a question that we got here from Sun and Moon, who's been amazingly interactive tonight. And I know that there's another guy, Corey Thompson, that put some stuff up, but I didn't get a chance to get to him. But we've got a question here from your observation thus far. What two market groups, online, physical stores, convention sales, et cetera, seem to be the best ROI for indies? And it's interesting to me that he's included online and also convention sales, because, you know, convention sales are a huge part of the super indie punk rock world. But, you know, I'm just going to let you kind of take that question. What's the best way for indies who spend 20 grand or 50 grand on a movie to make the most ROI, in your opinion?
Honestly, I still think it's online. I mean, your best return on investment is to get a deal with a streamer of some sort, whether it's getting yourself on Amazon Prime, or you know, everybody would love Netflix, or even some of the smaller YouTube, or like, you know, again, Quibi, which is just now starting. You obviously have to break that. You would have to break your movie apart and do it in segments and stuff like that. But your best return on investment right now is looking at your different AVOD and VOD channels and seeing what kind of a deal you can get out of them. Because you can really reach a huge audience, and there's a need for a lot of content, and you know people will watch stuff. I just picked up something on Prime, and I'm not going to say the title, just in case they're watching. But like I watched like 10 minutes of it. I don't know what they made off of that, but like I was just like, okay. But I watched it because I was scrolling through Prime, and I was just like, I'll try something new. This one's got a catchy log line.
Right.
So
we talked about that, and there is an expectation, I think, that comes with that, and I think that's important to play into. And I think if you're going to make content and consider to put it out there online, you need to make your content for your audience. You brought up Quibi. It's funny. I don't think Quibi's doing much right now because they're all up in that patent lawsuit and everything that's going on.
Well, they bought a lot of content, and they're certainly willing to spread the money around right now. I don't know, with all the lawsuits and everything, where they're going to end up. But they made a big splash. They got all the commercials, so they're a good buzzword to throw around right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can say Quibi, but you can exchange that for a lot of stuff. There's a lot of AVOD channels out there. I mean, that's the beauty of online right now, and not just in the United States, and worldwide. That if you can tap into that market, it can really not only give you an audience, but really bring a return on investment for you and your film. If you were smart about what you spend on production. I mean, if you spend, $20 million on your production, that way is not going to be the best way for you,
Right. And AVOD is actually something that we're at the Indie Brigade working hard to kind of put the final touches on our own AVOD label. So
nice.
You and I touched on that just a little bit, and just so everybody knows, there will be a much larger announcement coming from Bryce and myself in the near future, as soon as we work out all of that stuff. So we're very excited about all of that. We've got two kind of questions that are kind of like similar here. One is there, how much does distribution usually cost? But I'm going to roll that one into the second part of Sun and Moon's question, which is there an average rule of thumb type of thing for figuring out a rounded figure on the percentage of the budget to consider for distribution? So I think that's a very smart question, right? Like when raising money to make your movie, is there a rule of thumb to stick to? If I'm going to make a movie for $100,000, do I need to raise another 25 grand, another 50, another 100, and dedicate that strictly to distribution and marketing? And maybe you could explain, this is a good time for you to explain to people what P&A is and what all of that stuff is and how that factors into distribution, right?
Sure. I mean, honestly, both of those questions are great and kind of, like you said, very similar. And it's an interesting part of the business. So basically the money, is from a studio to an independent distributor or whoever, the money they spend to make sure that your movie goes from your hands into being seen by an audience is basically called P&A budget. Most of the times it's mostly associated with like a theatrical release. And that's basically all the marketing and distribution costs that go into transitioning your film from one to the other. And a part of that is actually the post-production costs that you spend on delivery. For instance, Netflix, if you're going to deliver to Netflix, they are very, very particular about what they demand in a delivery from a filmmaker. And that could run you, anywhere from 20 to 50 grand, depending on how you shot the film and all that stuff. And most of the time, as a filmmaker, you don't really need to worry about the cost of the distribution part of it. But you should always, I think, add in a little bit of budget for marketing. Well, you should always be able to deliver at least a first version of a one sheet or a poster. That's the same thing, but just saying it in two different ways. But you should always be able to cut a trailer and, always give some kind of an idea in order to pitch your movie to whoever's going to be actually distributing it. So I would always make sure that you have a little bit of a budget in order to deliver that. And you can find, as an indie, you can find indie graphic designers who are willing to work, and give you a one sheet, or, as you're cutting your film, cut a good trailer at the same time, try to roll that into the same, to keep your costs low. But really your main costs boil down to delivery. And whether you're delivering to a distributor who's going to take it out and they're going to take your film and then they're going to deliver to Netflix, or however it is, you're still going to run into delivery costs, because everybody nowadays needs you to deliver a film a specific way. So I would easily set aside an additional 20 grand, if not a little bit more, for your delivery costs alone.
So we're talking, I want to be specific. I want to be clear here. We're talking about very traditional distribution methods here. We're not talking about necessarily if you've just made a $50,000 film and you're trying to put it out on AVOD platforms. We're talking about
true, but even with AVOD platforms, or Amazon Prime or whatever, there is a delivery cost involved. Like, you shoot your film, you're not just going to take it from, oh, here I'm done in post, to here, because every platform requires a very specific specs for their platform. So you may very well have to change what you shot and delivered into 3 different other versions of that same delivery, and they're going to demand that you pay for it. So there's always going to be some sort of a delivery cost involved, and it's very important that you get all your ducks in a row and you have a little extra budget for those deliveries.
Yeah, some services won't take your deliverables without subtitles from,
right.
From like
CCSL and closed caption, open caption. A lot of times a company will make those themselves, but if you've got the budget to make it, it makes you a little bit ahead of the game for sure. Then the other thing is, there's Joe.
Fucking Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Joe, what's everybody listening to, Joe?
You're listening to Romero Pictures Indie Brigade with your host, George C. Romero, and me, Joe Ridgely. And right now, George is talking to Bryce Campbell.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. What I was going to say, to kind of further expound, there is another side of the business called, basically it's like a service deal. So, if you've got the financing, which not very many people do, but if you do, and you've made a movie and, Universal turns you down because they don't think that you're on par with Fast and the Furious 12 and they don't need to release your film. There is a thing where if you have the budget, there are companies out there that will actually, let you do a service deal through them. And that's basically you hire a distribution company that's already established to help you get your film to the market or to an ancillary program, or, usually that kind of a service deal works with theatrical. So if you really feel like your film needs to be theatrical and you really feel and you've got money behind you to make that happen, there are companies out there that will do a service deal with you, and they take a fee, but you get to utilize their resources in order to get the theaters and get your film seen. Now that can be fairly expensive depending on how many theaters you want to go. I would say that's anywhere from, a couple $100,000 to, in the millions, depending on, how really much you believe in your film. But those kind of deals do exist. So if that's the kind of project you're making and you feel like no matter what, you want to get it out there, it's also a way for you to pretty much, control and get the majority of the money back all the way through, to the end user. Then those deals exist out there. So that's something that you can consider if you've got the right investor behind you.
So now I'm gonna scale this way back, and I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna wrap up here with a kind of a bigger question for the super small budget stuff, right? Like, so say I spend 150, 250 grand to make a movie. Say I spend 100 grand to make a movie. And I know for a fact, because I've talked to you and I've done my research, and I know for a fact that I'm going to have that this film could do well in Germany. And I know for a fact that it's designed to fit a niche in 4 other countries, right? What about forewalling in terms of increasing that project's value for the foreign markets? This is something you and I talked about several years ago.
Yeah.
And it used to be something that was done, but is that something you feel
doesn't matter much anymore?
Not so much. Do you think AVOD could serve that same purpose these days?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like when you get down to that level for foreign sales or worldwide sales, unless you're doing, what they consider a traditional theatrical release of at least, say 500 screens or better, it doesn't really impact your worldwide sales anymore. So forewalling is not really a feasible way of doing it. Because you're spending money per theater, and you definitely do not want to spend that kind of money forewalling 500 theaters. And then, they've kind of caught on to that game, and they're like, well, you're just spending money. You're not really getting those kind of audiences. So, I mean, the worldwide market is very smart these days, and those kind of four-wall tricks don't necessarily work as well as they used to. And then when you get down to like the AVOD question, you're probably selling worldwide in like Germany and Brazil and whatever. You're probably selling to a streaming platform down there as well. And so your AVOD in the US doesn't affect it necessarily. If you've got a good film and you know it's going to sell foreign, your best bet is to get the right sales agent behind you and then let them get the best deal based on what you have to deliver.
Awesome. I've got one last question for you, and this is, and we'll go out on this one. What is the most important thing that you think? What's the most important thing you think independent filmmakers should think of with regard to their project when it comes to the final sales and distribution of it? What's the one thing, if you could change the way independent filmmakers think based on one piece of advice you could give them, what would that piece of advice be?
Gosh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, we asked the hard shit here at the Indie Brigade.
I mean, honestly, as an indie filmmaker, just be honest about your film. Like, if it's really good and you really want to see, it's really like, what do you want out of your film? Like, if it's really good and you really want to see it do something, then think about your cast. Don't go crazy and try to hire Will Smith for, whatever, but like, just be really smart about your cast and don't just think traditional, like Hollywood A-listers either, because there's a lot of cast out there that does really well foreign, does really well on ancillary markets that you don't have to, pay the, A-lister price for Hollywood actors. Cast is super important when it comes down to your final thing. It's, I hate to say that, but really be smart about it and cast appropriately to what you think your film actually is. And honestly, if you think you've got a quirky little independent film that's got a great, hook to it, and you don't want to pay for anybody well-known, you want to use, no-name cast or your friends or whatever, that's great. Spend your money and make it look the best you can. And maybe think about going the festival route. Then that's going to be extra money to you. But the festival route, if it really has a good buzz and it's really worth it, can pay off big dividends. So it's definitely worth it. But really, just when you're starting your project and you've got the script and you truly believe in it, don't get caught up in just the, wow, this is amazing and we're super excited about it. Like, take a step back, look at it from a critical business standpoint and say, what am I really going to be able to do with this film? And then make your decisions based on that.
Awesome. Well, that's great advice, Bryce. And I cannot thank you enough for spending some time here with us tonight, man. You're one of my best friends on the planet. I love you to death. I always will. And we're going to have some very cool other shit to talk about with the Brigade here with Bryce coming up soon. So hopefully you'll join our community and get involved in the conversation with us when you get the invite from Joe. If he hasn't sent it to you already, I'll just blame him real quick. And and we'll go from there. But brother, I can't thank you enough for coming.
Dude, it was a blast, man.
And dropping stuff, and we'll be in touch soon. And here, Joe looks like he wants to say something. He looks stressed.
I work with you.
You look stressed out. Why are you stressed out?
Because I work with you.
Don't be stressed out.
No.
I understand, Joe. I understand.
Thank you, Bryce. Bryce, for those who would like to look into things with you further, where can they find you on social media or websites, or you have the floor?
I'm actually on Stage 32, which I think is a great little networking site for industry professionals and novices and people who are looking to network. It's a lot of like LinkedIn for the entertainment world. So highly recommend you find me on there. My website, creativevalleyproductions.com, is up and running, soon to transition over to Creative Valley Pictures. But for right now, you can find me there. And, I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well. So look me up.
Awesome. Bryce has forgotten more about sales and distribution than any of us will ever learn. So I hope you all paid the fuck attention tonight. He's a very good person and a very smart guy.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, Bryce. Have a good night, man. I'll talk to you this week.
Yeah, take care, man. Nice meeting you, Joe.
Nice meeting you as well. Good night. Okay, again, another guy, a wealth of information there. That was cool.
I'm telling you. Yeah, man, that was awesome. Listen, that has pretty much been our season 2 finale. We've got one more guy we're going to pop up here real quick before
we do that. Little house cleaning again, or not?
What?
What are you going to be announcing on Sunday?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah. Everybody, we're going to be announcing the winner of the first annual quarterly, but whatever, I don't know, the first Romero Pictures Indie Brigade online trailer fest. We do have our winner, and we will be announcing that on Sunday at some point. We're going to be announcing that on our Instagram page. And then after that, we'll go ahead and put it over to the Facebook world. But we're very serious about wanting to start this conversation moving between the platforms and everything. So we're going to be announcing our winner for the Trailer Fest on our Instagram account. So make sure, if you don't already follow the Indie Brigade Instagram account, and based on the numbers, it doesn't look like a lot of you do, which is why we want to start moving the conversation over there. Make sure you go on Instagram and find us at whatever that is on Instagram. Joe could probably tell you. I think it's Indie Brigade. Right? Indie-Brigade, Indie.Brigade, whatever. Can they just search Indie Brigade? What, Joe? Tell them. God damn it. How many times do I have to ask you?
Underscore. I'm the one that has to be doing 2 shows right now, so my eyeballs are kind of floating.
No, they're not both right now. One's coming up in a few minutes. So don't try to make it sound like it's harder.
So this may be a new thing. We may transition right into the next one if they're coming this close together.
I think we're going to have a couple of minute break, enough time for you to go mix a new drink at least.
Well, absolutely, amongst other things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Mr. David Madison, and you guys are going to hang out for a couple of minutes while I go do that.
David Lee Madison, how are you this evening, sir?
How are you, gentlemen?
I'm great. The now he's back.
Great too. Thank you. I didn't want to be rude.
There's nothing rude about you, Joe.
Everything about Joe is rude. Everything about Joe is rude. You know that, David. Oh, you're just too nice.
Your show was fantastic, by the way, George.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to yours. Yours is coming up in about 9 minutes.
Okay, but I want to get everybody prepared because, as George will tell you, before we do these shows, we meet beforehand. And it's like where we're all like, it looks like the Brady Bunch. We're all talking to each other in little boxes. And my first guest tonight, Brad Loree, who's Michael Myers from Halloween Resurrection and Stryker from X-Men 2 and so many movies, Mr. Hush. As George will attest, when he came on to do the audio video test, he looked very tired and he was naked.
Yes.
So, yes, he was naked. And, that was rather horrifying. So, with that being said, I don't know what to be prepared for with my show tonight. What do you think, George?
I think you've got a couple of options. First of all, I can attest to the fact that he was naked, and I think that might be if he's still naked, he'll be the first official naked guest on the Indie Brigade Network.
There you go.
Which begs me the question, maybe you should probably, I don't want him to feel uncomfortable, so if he's naked, I don't know, you might have to strip down to do your show. I don't know. That's going to be on you.
We'll lose everybody watching it if I do that.
I don't wear pants on the show, but I mean,
I.
That's the whole beauty of this. I hate pants. So, listen, seriously, I think you're about to do a great show tonight. I'm thrilled that you've joined the network. Last week's show was phenomenal. This week's show is going to be phenomenal, and I hope you'll have a lot of fun tonight. I feel like there's not much point in really going into a lot of detail about what you're going to do because people will just have to wait about 7 minutes.
Yes, and if you will join me for the first few minutes of my show, I want to share something with you really cool that's kind of in tune with what you guys were talking about earlier.
Okay, yeah, I'd be honored, man. Anytime you feel like having me on, I'm more than happy. Once we're done, I just take off the rest of my clothes and watch TV. So, George,
this is your world. I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. So you could come in whenever you like. You're always welcome.
Never, man. I would never. If you ever want me, just feel free to say the word. I'm happy to pop in. I think what you're doing is a great thing. I think what you've brought to the Indie Brigade is a phenomenal addition, and I think it's just great that you do this at the end of the night. At the end of the night, it's a great name for the show. It sums everything up, and I think that you're kick-ass at this, man. So, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with the rest of your show moving forward and all the people you're going to have on. It's a lot of fun hanging out with you, and I'm glad that other people now get a chance to hang out with you.
Oh, thank you. And what's awesome is I got to book the next several shows worth of guests. So tonight I'll be able to tell you who's going to be on our show on the 27th, and it's pretty epic. That's
awesome. I cannot wait to hear about that. Yeah, we're taking a 1 week hiatus, and I don't know if you saw the announcement over the next 2 weeks. We're going to be prepping and launching the DEF CON 1, which is the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade online fan convention.
I know. I'm super excited about that. I hope even if I could be remotely involved in that, I'd be honored.
We got a lot to talk about. It kind of came up pretty recently, and I got to say it was born out of this COVID-19 shit, man. Like I talked to a bunch of people today who said there's nothing to do. There's literally nothing to do. Everything's closed. Everything's being canceled. Schools are being canceled. All the fun shit's being canceled. There's nothing to do except get on the internet. So it struck us internally, and we just kind of said, why don't we, and then we started noticing all these conventions are being canceled. And that's going to hurt not only, obviously the fans who want to go to them and have spent money to go to them, but it's also going to hurt the people who attend the conventions, because that's a form of revenue for everybody who does that, in the independent world. And this is an opportunity, I think, to kind of maybe make up for some of that and help people figure out how to make up a little bit of that.
No, absolutely. And, it's horrifying. I mean, you can't watch a baseball game, a basketball game. The NCAA tournament is gone. I know several restaurants. I live in a small town up in Northeast Pennsylvania that they're nobody's going out and they're closing. So it's really like we're living in, a Stephen King horror movie. So, I mean, it's really wild. I never thought I'd actually see anything like this.
Yeah, I know. It actually feels kind of like an apocalypse, like you see in these films or you're reading these books and you think, somebody told me today, they said, oh, my wife came home not feeling well. And I said, what, did she get bitten? It literally is like an apocalypse going on. I went to the grocery store today. It was crazy. Like there was nothing. People, and it's bringing out the worst in people too. When they go to these places, it's everybody's terrified. Everybody looks at you like you just killed their cat. And there's all the milk of human kindness has been drained out there in the public right now, and it fucking sucks.
It's funny. All my friends laughed at me when I moved from New York City to a mountain in Northeast Pennsylvania. But who's laughing now?
You're safe. Hey, yes. Man, Same thing with me. I moved from LA to Kentucky, and it's like I'm out here. It's all good. I've got a good line of sight around my property and a really good scope. So I'm happy and
It's
safe.
horrifying.
Yeah. So, well, it looks like we're about 3 minutes away from your show. Is there anything else that you want to chime in, or is
No,
Joe
I mean,
back, or-
everybody get prepared for the train wreck that is my show. I think it's part of its charm. George will attest that Brad's an interesting fellow, and I just hope that he's awake to chime in. But if he's not, we have Scott Schiaffo, the Chuli's gum guy, Uncle Scott, as he's called in my household, will now be one of my reoccurring guests and a friend of the show. He's kind of like my Chris Elliott if this was the David Letterman show.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like he has the talent of Chris Elliott, where I don't have the talent of David Letterman. So hopefully he will bring this show up to the excellence that your network and your show, following your show, deserves.
You do that all on your own, but I'm thrilled to see what you're going to be doing with Scott and how he's going to be on your show on a regular. I'm really thrilled to see how this is all gonna go, man. I really am, and I think that the end of the night here on the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade Network is going to be something that extra special that people are going to start tuning in for. And I'm just, waiting to get jealous of you because people will tune in and just wait to skip to the end.
I assure you that's never going to happen, Joe.
Fucking Joe.
This is the show that people fall asleep to after watching yours.
I fall asleep to myself sometimes while I'm talking. My wife falls asleep when I talk a lot. Joe, your mic's muted.
No, it's not.
Joe, you're an asshole.
Yes, I am.
What's going on? Are we going to wrap it up here and let David kick off his this is episode 2, right? Last week was pilot.
Yeah.
Episode 2. Season 1, episode
People said
2.
People said it would never
Did
be
you see
last.
it? Wait. Did you see it?
What's
Wait.
that?
Okay, look up in the corner.
Right?
You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
look at that. Well, I think, are we doing a sign off or are we just rolling? What are we doing?
Well, we're going to drop David off for 1 second, and then, we are going to do a sign off. So
Baby, kill it tonight, brother.
he is definitely going to. I'm back. Did you miss me?
No, not at all.
Oh.
Yes, I did. I always miss you when you're gone.
Well, you see, I dropped David out, and then I'm going to drop you out. And then, oh no, she said favorite people, so I guess I got to keep you up, even though that wasn't intended for me, obviously. But
Oh, yeah. I totally, when I read that, I thought she was just talking about you and you alone. Yeah.
Obviously, it was for you and David. But all right, it is 11 p.m. So sign off, sir.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching tonight. And as always, please and kindly fuck off till next time.
Good night. Now I got to drop him out, and I got to do some fun stuff here, and then make it look like magic. Still got to work on an intro, but anywho. That's the wrong one. What did you do?
I broke it.
Apparently. All right, we got to make an intro for you because this is unacceptable. And I'm not blaming myself on this one. I'm blaming the bald guy that was just on.
Let me ask you a question, Joe.
Sure.
Are you old enough to remember the Gary Shandling show?
I am. It was a Fox Network show.
Exactly. Do you remember the theme song for the Gary Shandling show?
I do.
This is the song to Gary show. Gary called me up and asked me if I'd write him a theme song. I got to get like Scott Schiaffo to do that for me. Write me a Dave Madison theme song.
Absolutely.
Show song. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's funny. Last week, I was barely alive doing this show, and I apologize to everybody watching it, especially to Dan Roebuck and Chad Rook, who had to look at a tired, babbling idiot. Tonight, I am much more awake, so I'm a much more awake, babbling idiot. But it's going to be a fun show.
And George is yelling at me, just so you know, that there is an intro. But yeah, Joe had internet. Joe's not going to make excuses, but sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Let me ask you, is Joe still available to be popped up?
Is Joe still available?
I mean, George.
Oh.
You said Joe. You said Joe. Joe made me this, and I said Joe like an idiot.
George, shake your head if you're available to be popped up.
Hey, buddy.
There you go, brother.
Man, I feel like my show just ended.
Just give me 30 seconds of your time.
Yeah.
Of your valuable time.
Not at all.
Now, you had that wonderful musician on earlier, and I didn't even know he was like the drummer for Evanescence. That's like super cool.
Right.
But with that being said, I wanted to share with you guys something really cool. I'm kind of a collector of antiquities and toys and old cool stuff. And this right here, I don't know if you could see it, is one of the very, very first records ever recorded. It's 136 years old, and it was recorded by Thomas Edison himself. His voice appears on this. It's the Venetian Instrumental Quartet out of New Jersey. As many people know, Thomas Edison was originally from New Jersey. They named the town Edison, New Jersey, oddly enough. It's a weird coincidence. And they were called Blue Amberols, these records. And they were cylinders. People would put this cylinder into a cylinder record player and turn it by hand, and they would have one of those big, long tubes on the end, like you see, like the old RCA Victor label. So you think about all the technology we have. We're here in all different states talking to each other, doing a show that, thousands of people are watching. And back in the day, 136 years ago, people had stuff like this, a Blue Amberol record. How cool is that?
It's pretty cool, I mean, when you think about I wonder if back then there were thoughts like, I wonder how far this will go, and what were the limits of that, compared
there was some guy who said, Tom, you'll never go anywhere with this thing.
Nobody wants to hear your voice.
Nobody wants to hear your voice with the boys choir. 7 billion records later, he's like, ha ha.
That's one of the coolest things I've ever seen that anybody actually that I know owns. That's super cool, man.
I think it's the 9th recording he ever did, and I got it as a gift from music god David Geffen. So it's one of every now and then on the show I want to show you some like kind of cool little shigamajig that I have.
That's pretty cool. That's super cool, and I appreciate you doing that on here, man. I think that's a neat little segment, and I think you've now sparked you've got my wheels spinning now. So, now you watch Joe, you could see him start to sweat.
You know what we have to do, Joe and George? We have to get one of those old cylinder record players and play this for our audience.
That would be cool.
To hear Tom Edison's voice himself, that would be pretty cool.
Now, what is that made out of?
It's kind of like what old
also the cylinders, and
you can't drink out of it, Joe.
It's funny because on the rim they actually put the title of the song and artist. Like, can you kind of see that?
Yeah, kind of.
See the markings.
Yeah.
It's so amazing that was, it's such an unbelievable piece of history and technology that you're holding in your hand.
And it's amazing because back in 1898, when this record came out, they would put it in the dashboard of the Model T and hit track 7 and listen to Thomas Edison. It was awesome.
Does that have any of his freestyle on it?
Yes. It's back when he was rapping with Two Live Crew, before he worked with Slick Rick, and of course, who the hell did Slick Rick work with?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but the kids are paying big money for those to scratch them now.
Yes, they are.
Man.
Neat piece of history. Absolutely. That's
all right. Well, it looks like
Thank
people
you.
are starting to roll in with the comments and the questions for you, David. So listen, have a great show.
Thank you, George. Of course. Yeah. Thank you for starting me off. And
no, man, I'm excited, man. Just roll with it and have fun with it, dude. This is all you and your thing. I'm going to be watching from my wood shop and smoking cigarettes. And...
No. You're vaping.
Yeah, you're vaping.
No, now my show's over, so when I leave the room, I'm going to go back to sleep.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Can we do a few less of these, please?
Who's doing that?
Oh, that's me.
Oh,
No, not. I'm sorry. that was a hand gesture to. Okay, never mind. I wasn't. No, I forgot. That means something different now. That. Okay.
You kids have fun.
Yeah. Okay. Bye
thank you, George. See you later, Dad.
Oh, and I was referring to the comment that he shouldn't be leaving. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That I was no. Now that I realize what that is supposed to mean now in today's standards.
You know what? Between you and I, Joe, that will always mean like okay, Spanky to me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Just thinking, okay.
Yeah. It never meant anything offensive when I was a kid.
And politically correct now saying that. I can't win. It's history. Okay.
So let me ask you something.
Absolutely.
What are the odds that Brad calls in?
He may be down there right now.
Are you kidding me?
Does this look like a face-up kid?
Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Can you go off and try to gather him and make sure that his camera's the right way and everything, and then put him on, or do we just have to put him on?
We just got to kind of put him on.
Okay.
He's got a halo. So,
if anybody has a halo, it's Brad.
Are you ready to introduce Brad?
I am absolutely ready. Ladies and gentlemen, the first guest tonight, all kidding aside, is one of my very dearest friends. And I love him to death like a brother. And you know him from so many movies. He's beloved in the horror community for playing Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection. He played Stryker in X-Men 2. He played Mac in my film, not Mac, he played Holland in my film, Mr. Hush. And too many titles to go through. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brad Loree.
Woohoo!
The Brad Man.
Oh, that was awesome. Hey, Davey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. You're just sideways.
Sideways.
He's up and down for everybody else.
Oh, he is? Okay. So then you're perfect.
The
you,
audience
Joe.
can't see us.
Yes, the audience can see us.
Oh, Dave. I thought this was like a radio thing. I should have shaved and combed my hair.
Brad, you are such a handsome son of a bitch, it doesn't matter.
Are you losing more weight?
If I am, Edward X. Young is finding it.
Oh, is that right?
No, just kidding.
No, you look thinner than even last time I saw you. You lost a lot of weight last time I saw you.
Thank you, good
Handsome
sir.
beggar.
No.
And I think what you lost, I gained.
No. You look awesome, brother.
Buddy,
Yes.
God bless your cotton socks. Just saying
you.
it now. Anyway, hello to everybody. And where are you right now, Dave? What
I am in
state?
my home in Milford, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
You've been here?
Yes. Had a nice. Yes, I have. I think we had a nice dinner there after we wrapped up.
Yes, we did, and we had our wrap party here.
That's right.
So, Brad,
Anyway,
man,
yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you a lot of the standard questions that you've probably been asked a gazillion times.
But will I know
the-
the answers?
I hope so. If you don't, just make them up like I do.
Of course. Like you taught me.
Yes. You, of course, were in what I like to call the original, like, legacy Halloween films, the original Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance
Right.
legacy Halloween films. And I wanted to ask you a question. I may never have asked you this before, but what was it like to work with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Well, it was a dream come true. Of course, we all love her from her large body of work. And but no, she was very professional. Came in for 3.5 days, bought everybody a crew gift. And from according to the producer, Malika Cod, she was going to donate her entire income from those 4 days, Dave, to, I guess she works with the terminally ill kids in the LA Children's Hospital. She donates a lot of her time and her money. All the money from her one convention, which was a lot of money, was all going to those kids. But she's an awesome person. Yeah, no, she's a very nice lady. Very genuine.
Now, Resurrection was also directed by Rick Rosenthal, as I recall.
Yeah.
And Rick Rosenthal did Halloween 2, which is actually one of my favorite Halloween movies.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what was it like working with Rick?
It was, again, another great experience. He, when they called me in to meet everybody, he was there with the executives. It was almost like hiring Michael Myers was an afterthought. And we discussed, he described the way Michael moves as his upper body is being transported by his legs as if they're on a pedestal. So the upper body doesn't, swing the arms or any of that. So I did it a few times, and he said to everybody, yeah, he should be fine. And apparently they didn't. I was the first one they looked at, and I was the only person they looked at. They hired me on the spot.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And, one little misunderstanding in one scene on the movie where he kind of got a little short with me, but other than that, we got along great.
Yeah, and when you were preparing to play Michael, was there any specific previous Michaels that you went back and watched to to get inspired by?
I did my homework and research, Dave. I watched all the Halloweens, but of course, ultimately, I went back to the first one and watched Nick Castle over and over. The one scene near the end when Jamie's in the house with the kids and they're all freaked out, and he goes from the house across the street. There's a long shot of him walking across the street, and that was the gate that I was striving for. And because it was just something about that slow a walk of his, with purpose, and he's just all menacing, and so that was what I tried to copy. That's what I liked about Michael. That's what I liked about Michael.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
Over. Yeah, no, I'm just saying that's what the appeal for me was with Michael Myers. Was that walk. He just seems so creepy, because I'm not a big horror fan, as you know. I'm a bit of chicken shit. So, I fell in love with that first Halloween movie.
I'm a big Nick Castle fan, too. Yes.
Yeah, great guy.
I'm a big Nick Castle fan, too. But I also I always thought that Dick Warlock brought a little something. And this is no shit, because I would never pull your leg. I always thought that you and Dick Warlock were the two follow-ups to Nick Castle. And
so thank you.
What you and Dick Warlock did was you guys brought something to the character that made Michael transcend being more than just Pepe Le Pew, somebody who walks slowly but always gets their victim in the end. And seeing your performances in films like that is what made me reach out to you to be in my film Mr. Hush, because you're just such a talented actor. You got to work with the great Jack Lemmon. Can you share a little with us? Because a lot of indie filmmakers, look at somebody as Jack Lemmon like an absolute icon. And what could you share with us about working with Jack Lemmon?
It's funny you ask about that, David, because I have on many occasions told people when we're talking stories about being on set, that was probably the most starstruck I've ever been, because as a kid, my dad was a big fan of Jack Lemmon. He particularly liked the movie The Out-of-Towners, I think it was called.
Okay.
And I was just a young boy when my dad told me about this movie. Anyway, it was a big deal to me that I was working with one of my dad's heroes, movie heroes. And he was such a nice guy.
Was he the type of actor who was giving to you, or was he the type who did his part and made you hold up your end?
I would say he came, did his job, and gave you any He was very generous, and he certainly didn't hog the scene, or I mean, he's too professional for that.
Absolutely. You also got to work with Bryan Singer on X-Men 2, playing young Stryker.
Yes.
Any good stories you could share about working on that film?
I didn't have much interaction with Bryan because, of course, he was so busy all the time, Dave. It was just that one short scene. I just stood there in front of the camera, and he was off to the side, and we just tried some different variations, and it wasn't any big direct. It wasn't, as you know, it's only one line kind of thing, and you can barely even hear it in the movie. But it was interesting, and it was nice to be in that, other than just being a stunt guy, because it's such a popular series, of course, franchise.
I see recently you worked on something called Little Fish. Is there something you could share with us about that?
Oh, Little Fish.
It's on your IMDb.
It's recent?
Yeah, it's 2020.
Okay. My memory's going, Dave, Little Fish.
We could skip Little Fish and go to Child's Play.
Child's Play, yes. That was not the working title at the time, of course, because everything's hush hush these days. But I was just on set overnight with a bunch of my friends. My friend was a stunt coordinator, and we were all just running around getting bloody and being chased by Chucky with the big knife.
So, Brad, do you have any convention appearances that you're going to be doing anytime soon?
Well, apparently they shut the planet down, so no, Dave. I actually just came home on Monday from London and Rotterdam, and the night before the Rotterdam show, an 86-year-old gentleman died from the COVID-19, and of course everyone went into a panic, and they cordoned off sections of the city, started quarantining certain neighborhoods, and so no one showed up to that. So, and that's the question, Dave. No, I would be. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to get the Flintstone virus that's going to help us with this virus. But right now, I have nothing on the slate.
Oh, well, this show is directed, and this whole network is directed at a lot of indie filmmakers and people who are trying to aspire to do the things that they dream of doing in life.
Yeah.
And I want to tell all the indie filmmakers out there that when I was making Mr. Hush, I wrote the script, and I went to a convention in New Jersey, and I went up to Brad Loree, who's Michael Myers and very well known in the business.
Big shot.
A big shot. And I said, Brad, I have this wonderful script that I think you'd be great for the lead role in. And we exchanged information. That film was Mr. Hush, of course. Yeah. And Brad was very charming and took a picture with my then 5-year-old daughter, and they hit it off famously because he's just such a great guy. And I think Brad, he gave me his card, and I think 5 or 6 months go by as I'm getting the financing together and getting the team together to actually shoot the movie. And 5 or 6 months go by, and I reach out to Brad, and I go, "Hey, Brad, it's Dave Madison. I met you at the convention. I was telling you about my film, Mr. Hush, and I think I shocked the shit out of you, didn't I?"
Yes, you did. But now let's just be from my side of the story. It was 2 years, David.
It was 2 years.
It was 2 years since we had met, and
wow.
I was cleaning up my house, and I came across the picture of Mandy and I, because I was trying to do some spring cleaning and downsize, and I remember looking at the picture thinking, it's funny. I never heard from that guy. Because he seems so genuine about wanting to work with me, and I was thinking about tossing the picture because I didn't think I was ever going to be in a relationship with you guys. But then I thought, no, this was a moment in my convention history, and I'm going to hang on to it because this isn't going to go on forever. And I'll look through this in a photo album when I'm 90. And less than 48 hours later, you phoned me.
Holy crap!
It was bizarre.
Now you watch that little girl grow up, and she calls you Uncle Brad, and she gives you a big hug and kiss every day.
Yeah.
Hey,
she calls me Dad number 2.
Yes, there's. I want to share some news with you that this should be just between you and us, but hell, everybody could hear this. She's on her way to Harvard.
David, is that right?
Yes.
Good for her, Harvard.
Yes, I don't know. I mean, I think the milkman must have been one hell of a smart guy.
You must have been prouder than Punch, David. The two of you and Ellen must be just. That's awesome. And what's she going to study?
She wants to be a corporate attorney.
Wow!
I hope she does really well so that she can support her old, fat, pathetic dad.
Davey, promise me in the next couple of weeks when she graduates that I get invited to the ceremony.
Absolutely.
I would love to see Mandy graduate Harvard. Wow.
Well, she's graduating high school. She's going to Harvard.
I know. Yeah. She'll be there for 4 years?
Yes.
David, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Well, she is a extremely bright valedictorian type person, isn't she?
She is, and it's horrifying because she's one of those people who actually finds being smart attractive, and not too many people are like that anymore.
No, David, that's absolutely the truth. But smart people recognize how much fun learning can be and how important it is.
Yep. So I heard that you are looking to put together a new website.
Yes. I've got these two young kids I met about a year ago through a friend of mine. And they're all gung-ho. They're web designers or brand designers, whatever it is, David. And I've been putting that off because finances. And the other side of that is my son has a clothing line, and but he does a lot of the similar stuff. And he wants to be the guy that is doing my T-shirts or whatever they do. But I don't like to do business with family. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be anyway. I'm just concerned about hurting his feelings, but that's life, Friends are friends and business is business. Don't confuse the two.
Absolutely. Do you think it's going to be bradloree.com?
David, you know what? Is that what I imagine that's what I should use.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Don't know anything. I'm a cybertard, right? So but yeah, I think my name should be somewhere in the marquee, like when we were in whatever that town was. When we went and previewed the new Halloween movie, my name was on the marquee. Thanks for that again, by the way.
Oh yeah, we went down. Me and Brad. He came to my Weekend of Fear at Wild West City. We did this convention at an old Wild West town that was had like it's totally 1880s. I think Dan and I talked about it last week, and we turned it right the week before Halloween into a big Halloween attraction horror convention. And Brad came out. But what was cool about that is that at that time, it was also right when the new Halloween was coming out, the second go-around with Jamie Lee Curtis. And a theater was kind enough to have me and Brad out, and Brad had a line around the block, signed about 500 Halloween. How do you like my shirt, by the way? I'm representing.
I can't see it. Attaboy.
There you go.
Thanks.
There you go. Brad's like, another 23 cents.
Okay, what happened there?
Now that's a picture of you and Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween Resurrection.
Oh, yes, it is too. There you are.
You're like the only guy in the world who would be looking at the back of her head and not her butt.
Yeah, well, I whenever I sign those pictures, I can't say that. Anyway, David, what do you hear from my friend Steven?
Stephen Jeffries. I spoke Stephen Jeffries. We're talking about he was Stark in Mr. Hush, and he was Evil Ed in Fright Night and Hoax 976 Evil, and just literally a horror icon. He's a friend of both Brad and I. I spoke to Stephen, oddly enough, last night. He's working. He got a new job in a law office. And and he's doing wonderfully, and hopefully he's going to be on the show very, very soon.
Oh, let me know when he is, because I'd like to look in on that.
Yes, maybe you could call in. We could both poke fun of him.
Exactly. David, how long have you been doing this? What do you call this? A podcast or?
It's like a podcast, kind of like viral show. And George Romero Jr., his dad was the great director George Romero, has this platform, and he was very, very kind enough to let me have this show after his very popular show. And this is our second episode of this train wreck, but hopefully people will find this train wreck Mildly amusing.
Oh, and David, so you do it like once a week?
I'm sorry?
How often do you do it?
We do it once every Friday night at 11 o'clock.
Every once a week. Okay, okay. Right on. Well, I'm very honored to be your second guest or your second show or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, you were going to be my first guest, but I had a lot of trouble getting a hold of you.
David, how about possible?
You were in England, right?
I was in England for a week and a half, but you have my one and only phone number and my one and only email address. And every time I talk to you, you say you can't get a hold of me, and that always disturbs me because you're one guy I don't want to ever lose touch with.
Oh, well, thank you. It's funny because I had a phone number for you, and every time I call it, some angry guy picks up, and I think I have an old phone number.
David, you've got, David, you have to delete that from your contacts tonight.
I will. As you know, I have my phone is from 1912. This is my phone. It's a flip phone.
I remember that. Yeah, I've seen your phone. I remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I refuse to get the big technology.
Well, it changes every 7 seconds, so why would you? Your phone does everything you need.
Listen, if I need to call you, we hear each other. Isn't that the most important thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to say we're going to go to a Mets game this year, but I don't know if there's going to be any baseball.
I know. We got to go to a Met game, I think, in 2015. But they won the World Series. No, they played in the World Series that year.
The year that we went and got rained out?
Yes, we were in the owner's box in the back. Remember first, and it was pouring. And then
I remember.
Started. Yeah.
I remember the VIP lounge. You could have landed a jet in that place.
The city feels very nice.
David, when did you last see Ed?
Ed came. We shot a short film, which is a prequel to Mr. Hush that came out in early October. So we shot that in late August, and Ed came up for 2 days, and we shot that. It's around Mr. Hush running into a Confederate soldier at the Battle of Gettysburg at the Devil's Den. So it was a pretty cool movie.
Right on. Hey, listen, am I allowed to ask about Connie?
I have not seen or heard from Connie.
No.
I think she came out and visited us at Wild West City.
Yeah, and that was the last time she saw her husband. They had a big fight that night. Now they're getting worse.
Well, I have no idea. It's probably nothing that we should be talking about on TV.
No. Oh, right. Yes, right. I don't know. It's Friday night. I had a couple beers. Are we talking about the country our listeners want to talk about or hear us talk about? Or?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are we in the right format, Dave, and stuff we're talking about? Is this what you want? Is this what people want to hear, or should we talk about?
You know what? I think people love hearing stuff like this because this is what real life is.
Okay, let me ask you this: what's the scuttlebutt with this virus thing in your neighborhood?
It's funny, Brad. Here in the U.S., it's like a Stephen King movie. Schools are all closed for like 2 or 3 weeks. There's runs in the supermarket for all kinds of food and supplies. The gas stations are crazy. It's literally like the beginning of The Mist. It's kind of horrifying.
Yeah. I tried to poo-pooing it all. And the funny thing is, I got home on Monday. On Tuesday, my brother and I in the morning had a big talk. We were both poking fun at the paranoia. The afternoon, the same day, my mother and my brother both texted me saying, we would like you to self-quarantine yourself for 14 days because I just came from Rotterdam where there was, like I said, there was an outbreak and whatnot. And when my mother called her dental office to confirm her appointment for the next day, they asked her, have you been in contact with anybody that's been to Europe recently? And she said, yes, my son. And they said, sorry, we can't have you come in just yet.
Oh.
That's what it's getting.
Are you feeling all right?
Hi. Dave, I'll tell you, in Rotterdam, the girl that was my assistant is a young student, and she's studying biotechnology. Mm-hmm. And she was poo-pooing she was saying it's just another version of a cold. And of course, if you're old or your immune system is deficient, it can get serious. But other than that, it's not that big a deal. And she says the media's blowing out of proportion and blah blah blah. But it's getting serious now.
That doesn't really seem. That doesn't really seem to be the case. It seems to be if you have any kind of underlying condition, it could really do a number on you.
Yeah, well, now Tom Hanks and his wife said they feel fine.
Yeah, you know what's funny? This isn't the first time that Tom Hanks is stranded on an island with somebody named Wilson.
That's right, Wilson. Well, anyway, I'm just wondering where this is gonna go. It's like the end of times.
Yeah.
You know
what's the great thing about times like this, Brad, is that things can only get better.
Well, there you go. That's one way of looking at it.
Absolutely. What you drinking?
I'm drinking Smirnoff Ice. I love the taste of lemonade with a little vodka.
Nice. That's actually supposedly the cure of the coronavirus.
Well, that's why I'm drinking it, Dave. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna drink a 6-pack and then go breathe on people. I'll be like the anvil. But you look great.
Oh, thank you. I'm about to hit the big 5-0.
David.
Yes.
When's your birthday again?
August 2nd. I share the same birthday as Kevin Smith.
Really?
Yes, we were born August 2nd, 1970. I think about 14 minutes apart. I got all the looks, he got all the talent, apparently.
Buddy, that's awesome. 5-0. I got the big 6-0 coming up.
Wow, I think you and Ed are right around the same time, aren't you?
Yeah, he's 18th, I think. I'm July 5th. And he's got a year or two on me. Oh, he turned 60 last year, that's right.
Wow. Can you believe it, Brad? This April, that movie, we filmed it 10 years ago.
David, has it been 10 years already?
Yes, it was April of 2010 we shot it.
Where does the time go? Resurrection was almost 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Who's that handsome gentleman?
Oh, I'm Joe Ridgely. Nice to meet you. Right.
Hey, Joe. All right, pal.
Joe is my cohort in crime on this show, and also the producer.
Fantastic.
An interesting fact, Mr. Hush. I mean, it is Friday the 13th.
Right.
Is it?
Mr. Hush, Friday the 13th.
Oh my God.
Well, Steve Dash was in Mr. Hush, and the late Steve Dash, sadly. And I think that Mr. Hush might actually. Thank you, Joe, for that lead-in. I think that Mr. Hush might be the only film that had a Michael Myers and a Jason Voorhees in it.
Oh, this is very interesting thought. Yeah, you're right.
It's definitely the only film that had a Michael Myers, a Jason Voorhees, and an Evil Ed. That's for sure.
There you go. The trifecta.
You know, it's fun. Brad, when we made that movie, you were so kind. You came up to a small town in northeast Pennsylvania. You spent about 5 weeks with us. And when we were making it, it never really occurred to me that it would be a top 10 hit in Redbox and Spawn conventions and literally seen by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And a big reason for that success was you. So again, I've done this to you a billion times. Thank you, Mr. Loree. You're awesome.
Yeah. No, thank you, David. It was one of the experiences I'll be thinking about when I'm old on my deathbed. But David, so last time we talked about the viewing audience of Mr. Hush, you somehow knew that over 3 million people had watched that show movie.
Mr. Hush was seen because it spent 6 weeks on Redbox's top 10, and because it was a very popular film on Netflix and Hulu and Vudu. My distributor, and this was going back maybe 3 or 4 years, said the analytics showed that film was seen by over 3 million people. So,
Mr. Hush was on Netflix down in the States?
Yes. It was on Netflix for 3 years, and it was in Redbox and Hulu and Vudu, and So that goofy little movie that we made actually has somewhat of a cult following, and
I'm
we're very proud of it.
about that. Good for you. Well, I'm just so honored to have been and privileged to be in it. Be a part of it.
And you're a main reason why it's so damn good. Libby McDermott saying Happy Friday the 13th, Brad.
Libby McDermott?
Yes,
Libby McDermott.
Yes, she's an amazing filmmaker and just an incredibly sweet person. And she was asking you if people get upset. That's her new film, Darkness Waits. And on the back there is a picture of me and Scott Schiaffo, who appear in that film. That movie's now available for you to buy on Blu-ray, so pick it up.
Darkness Waits, okay.
That was she was asking you, do you get upset when people confuse you for being a Jason?
No, David, because I understand that not everyone's a horror fan, so if you're not interested in the genre, it's easy to get confused. I would have been the same person if I hadn't ended up working on Mike, because I was I still don't watch horror films. I still don't.
I'm going to ask for my magical producer to reappear. Joe, are you there?
No.
Joe, is the wonderful Chuli's Gums guy, Mr. Schiaffo, available?
He is. Would you like me to bring him up?
Ladies and gentlemen, another dear friend of mine and a friend of Brad's. Needs no introduction on this show or this network by any means. One of the stars of Clerks and Vulgar and the upcoming film Wit's End, Mr. Scott Schiaffo.
What's up? Hey! Hi, man.
Good for you.
Good to see you, Brad.
Yeah, you better. Happy New Decade.
I'm sorry?
Happy New Decade. It's my way to say Happy New Year. To people
Brad just wanted to cover the entire 10 years.
Exactly. It's a new decade. It's going to be an exciting decade. As long as we all don't die. 2 years.
So, Uncle Chuli's Gum Guy.
Yes.
Do you have anything you want to ask Mr. Brad Loree?
Oh, gosh. You covered a lot of really good ground. You had a lot of interesting questions about Jamie and his experience on those films. I was wondering, because I know David fairly well now, both professionally and personally. Did David give you freedom to improvise at all?
David is very hands off. He only, if he saw something he didn't like, he very politely, no screaming aloud, correct it, let's try it this way. But yeah, no, he was very easy to work with. Do it again in a second.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you the same question, Scott. You've worked with me.
Yes, Scotty.
Do you feel the same way, Scott?
Well, absolutely, but the nature of the acting that I've done in their films was highly improvisational, and you did get a lot of freedom to pretty much create a lot. You had the idea of what the scene needed to do, and then you let us kind of go with it, and that's really a lot of fun.
Well, I think what worked the best with that, Scott, is it was you, me, and Brian. You, Brian Holland, I'm talking about from Clerks, and the three of us are dear friends outside of this life, and we just kind of. I thought it would be more organic if the three of us just kind of ribbed on each other and had fun with it. And when people ultimately see the movie, I think they'll appreciate that aspect.
Yeah, I agree, and I really, really enjoyed the challenge of doing the score with you. I had gotten to do the score on Middle Village, which was a slightly different animal. You had a good idea of the type of music you needed, and a lot of it was public domain that I just reworked. But with Wit's End, it's all original music, and I'm really excited about that.
Bradley, what we're talking about is me, Scott Schiaffo, and Brian O'Halloran just recently shot a survival film called Wit's End, and not only is Scott appear in it, but he also did the music for us.
Oh, fantastic!
Yep.
Here's my copy. How would I view that film, David?
It's gonna be limitedly run in theaters in June, but I will send you a Blu-ray or a DVD directly to your home.
God
Right,
bless
I gotta pimp something again. You've seen this already, but I'm pimping it again. Woo!
Mr. Madison.
Yes.
Before I forget, I need a new Mets hat cap.
I will send you one. Would you like a jersey too?
No, David. Thank you, though. I just have two, but I got more clothes than I'll ever wear in this lifetime. But I have the one I bought at that you bought me at the game. I've never lost it, but it's getting a little long in the tooth. And anyway, I'm 7 3/4, and I'll refund you next time I see you.
I'm not worried about that, brother. I will gladly.
I know, David. And I would never pay you back. Anyway.
On that note, Mr. Loree,
yes.
I want to thank you so much for being with me tonight. You know I love you, brother.
Thank you for having me, David. You know I love you. Give the girls a big hug. Tell them all I can't wait to see them.
Yes, and I can't wait to see you. And again, where can people who are looking to reach out to you, filmmakers or convention promoters, where can they find you, Brad, if they want to hook up with you?
Loree at iCloud.com.
Brad Loree at iCloud.com.
No, Bradley, Ley, Loree at iCloud.com.
Bradley Loree at iCloud.com.
Bradley, yeah. I use my Christian name, yeah.
Well, thank you, good sir.
Yes, David, I love you. Thanks so much. Scotty, great to see you. Joe, nice to have met you. You're there.
Yes, very much.
I'm so honored to be on here, and anytime you need to chat, give me a bell, kid. But get rid of that old number.
You got it, pal.
God bless America. I'll talk to you soon.
God love you, brother.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Brad.
Wow, I survived a Brad Loree interview.
Well, he was not sideways for the viewers, just for you and I.
Oh, he was sideways for you too.
Yeah.
Okay. No, Joe was telling me that he was not sideways.
Well, that's good. Okay. I mean, I got used.
It was weird. It kept throwing me off because I was talking to him like kind of like this.
Yeah, like getting
technically, I guess he may have been at an angle with the phone, laying on the couch, but my perception of sideways.
No. I went back onto Facebook and it looks perfectly fine there. When I was talking to him, he was literally sideways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was. It was a portrait setup, but it was tilted with his head. You know, it was vertical, but he was portrait Lance. You know. Am I? Hello, is this thing on? And it was a little wacky, but hey, I like an irreverent interview.
I think you could call that an whatever you just said interview.
Not sideways here. Okay, thank you for that. So I guess the folks watching, he wasn't sideways.
Just so you know, they're thanking you, Scott. Darkness Waits.
Oh, you got it. I'm going to do it again.
Which would be Matt and Libby, of course.
Because I love.
Let me get you full screen there, Scott.
Woo! There's no light down here in my basement, but what a beautiful poster. And it's, you know, of course, the movie is 7,000 times more deep than the poster. I don't want to just say it's a great poster. I'm really excited about this film, and I'm super critical of myself. In fact, I don't always like to see the finished films. And we saw a screening, and I was just so happy with how they cut it together. And I think it's going to be a really special film. I'm looking forward to it.
You know what I loved most about working on that film, Scott? It was, of course, going and working with you and Libby, and Matt, which were just incredible. But when we were done shooting, Libby gave me a giant box of chocolate that she got from a special place down by where we shot. And she knows I'm diabetic, so either she was being incredibly kind or she was trying to tell me, eat this chocolate and die based upon my performance. I'm not quite sure to this day what she was applying.
Oh, zing. Hey, Lance Wagner, that popped up. I don't want to ignore you. Thanks, Lance Wagner, for saying hello. Yeah, Lance Wagner. You should go back and forth. Lance Wagner. Yeah, Libby's got so much heart and passion that we had worked on a lot of the character through Skype, which was one of the first times I had done that with a director. And like me, I tear it apart and I have a million questions because I just want to really get a good idea of what the character is about. And especially when you don't get an entire script, you just get your scenes. I really want to kind of know what's going on so that it can inform me, unless I'm not supposed to know. The character's not supposed to know. But I haven't had my hair cut since that movie. That was the last that's 3 years ago it was shot. So I said I was going to get the haircut after the film comes out, and I know it's coming out soon. Love you, Lance. I know it's coming out soon, but I think I'm going to let the hair go.
I like it.
Yes, Libby rules.
You kind of got that Jesus thing going on right now.
Yeah, somebody was calling me Biker Jesus the other day.
Biker Jesus, I like it. What's the Jesus from the View Askew universe?
Well, you know what?
Buddy Jesus, right?
Jesus, Buddy Christ.
Buddy Christ,
right. Well, when we did the Comic Book Men episode where the old school Clerks guys came and played the comic book men in bowling, one of the producer guys came up to me and said, "Hey, we got this idea for you. We'd like you to emulate the character of Jesus from Big Lebowski. Remember the bowling guy?"
Mm-hmm.
So they gave me the hairnet and the glasses, and that's why I have that really bizarre look in that episode. But it worked really well. So, yeah, that was exciting too.
So what are you doing to live through the epic coronavirus, the world is ending world we live in now?
Oh, gosh. A week or so ago, I was poo-pooing it. Not that I didn't believe it, but I was poo-pooing it in that it's just hysteria that's maybe going to divert our attention from 45 maybe being a weenie, and they're focusing too much on this. But literally within the last 5 or 6 days, this is about as real as I've ever seen. I was speaking to Jewel, my lady friend, today, and in my lifetime, there's been crises and emergencies, but nothing like this. And it's scary. I went to see my dad in the rest home last week, and literally that evening, they called us up and said, "Well, it's a good thing you got to see him today, because as of today, moving forward, no visits until further notice." So it's as real as it's going to get. And I sort of, not to go political with this, but I saw the president today speaking about it, and that's like the first time I've seen him ever really be genuinely rattled, I think, in a way that wasn't flattering. So it's serious. I just hope it clears up. And, a lot of my peers, your peers, conventions are getting nuked, around, all over the place now, and that's a drag. But I don't know. I hope it just all works out for the best. I really do.
Just to show the wicked sense of humor that Joe Ridge had. He just put up a picture from Vulgar while we were talking about it.
Yeah. There you go. Travis Lee from Vulgar. That's Brian Johnson's film. Another film I had the opportunity to go head-to-head with Brian O'Halloran. It's kind of funny, the two films we appear in, well, now we're in 3 with yours. We go head-to-head. We're each other's kind of arch enemy, which is fun.
Yeah, you guys have a great way of working off each other that just shows how amazingly talented both you guys are. What not many people know about Scott is that he's an amazingly accomplished musician. And not only did he do the music for my film Middle Village, he did the music for my film Mr. Hush Legacy, and he did the film for my upcoming feature film Wit's End. So Scott, if there are filmmakers out there, or independent filmmakers, they would want to reach out to you for you to act in their films because you're an amazing and talented actor.
Thank you.
And B, you're also an extremely accomplished musician. When we were doing our little pre-show where we do our sound checks and stuff, you were jamming a little bit on a keyboard. Would you do something for us for maybe 30 seconds?
Let's see what I hear.
There you go.
Quick
I told Joe earlier that I need you to write me a theme song like the old Gary Shandling TV theme song for this show.
I heard that conversation. That's funny. That's funny.
You have any ideas for me?
Well, I have some music that I think that's not at all the vibe of it. I thought that I might have a song, or it's a heavy track I thought could work for your show, and I'll have to play it for you and you see if you like it. But rather than do that comic thing, which we could do that too. I mean, I'm open to whatever you want to do, but I have a really heavy track that I think might work well for
fit the vibe more.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you had mentioned there was something that was on the tip of my tongue now with my middle-aged brain, it's gone. You're talking about the music. Oh, I wasn't sure if you were building up onto where they could reach out to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, a good Google search of my name, you'll get all of the websites, which is Facebook, my name, Scott Schiaffo, Twitter, Scott Schiaffo, Instagram, Scott Schiaffo. I have a CD available called The Shoestring Serenade, which is a collection of film music of the last 10 or 15 years, film music I did that I kept the rights for because I have special agreements with all the filmmakers. And once you buy the CD, if there's any music on that CD that would work in your project, you can use it license free because the money from the CD goes to an animal charity. So it's a little different way of releasing music because it is a challenge in the new technology world we live in, how to release music and monetize it. And since monetizing it wasn't that important, I figured I would release it, you buy it, and then you can use the music royalty free however you like. So I keep busy. I'm very fortunate. I do keep busy. I have a thing called The Deep State, Tom Zanka's web series. I did the music and I have an acting role in that. And gotta say it again, I'm very excited for Darkness Waits. I'm very happy with my role. The way it was cut together is sweet. There you go. There it is. I mean, look at that artwork.
Who's that handsome fella next to you?
Oh, you mean on the left side? I'm looking at the front.
Oh, that's Conrad Brooks.
Yeah, right. Conrad Brooks and Whalen. And then of course that's you and I at the desk.
Isn't it kind of amazing that when you think about it, you and I and Libby, of course, were blessed to work with Conrad Brooks on his very last motion picture?
Oh, and my God, his scenes, it literally brought a tear to my eye because he's so connected, he's so passionate, he's so sweet in that role. It just, it's such it's a shame he's gone now, but he brings such a genuinely sweet moment to his parts in her film.
That's very true, and it's a very touching performance, and it's a part of the legacy of that film that will last forever. I want to share with you, you're going to be the very, very first person who knows this. The show's on like a hiatus next week, and we return on, I think March 27th is the date. The guest that night, on the end of the night, on March 27th, is none other than one of the most influential, one of the greatest directors of all time, John McNaughton.
Whoa! I'm a huge John McNaughton fan.
John McNaughton, who did Wild Things, and he worked with Robert De Niro and Bill Murray on Mad Dog and Glory. Yeah, and
Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer
with Michael Rooker. I mean, it's very, very, very rare that a filmmaker and a director of that magnitude does a show. So we are extremely honored that on March 27th, on the end of the night, John McNaughton will be our guest. It's an evening with John McNaughton because he will teach us more than any film class will ever teach you.
You know, just those three films that we cited, Henry, Portrait of Serial Killer, Mad Dog and Glory, and Wild Things, just those three alone for me put him in, you know, a league that's like, he's a maverick. And he's one of those unsung heroes because he's not a, you know, I think he's just terribly underrated in a sense. You know, probably a lot of people may not know him by name, but such powerful work.
And it's funny because I'm such a bonehead. I didn't realize that we weren't doing a show next week on the 20th. So I had built up this big thing that I was going to talk about tonight. The show was going to be called, the thing I was going to announce was A Couple of Johns. And you could think of that anyway. And it was going to be two directors back to back. But I had to pull out on the one on the 20th. So hopefully we'll get the other John, who I won't announce yet because it's enormous news. Hopefully we'll get him on the week after the 27th. So please, I hope you're around to ask, first of all, Mr. McNaughton questions and to, you know, as I recall, the three of us had a few conversations back in Netcong, New Jersey, back in September.
Oh gosh, I really, I won't say I fanboyed out on him because I didn't want to come off like that, but he knew it was a true, genuine admiration for the work. He's worked with actors that are, you know, I don't say pioneers, but actors who are incredibly powerful actors and playing against type. He's got De Niro playing the you know, the mook, the light guy, and Bill Murray is the heavy.
Heavy, right.
Probably one of the few times, if ever, the only time you really saw Bill Murray as the heavy. And it works so well. But I think because so many people weren't ready for it, it didn't really get embraced the way it should have. But it's a powerful movie. And certainly Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, gave us Michael Rooker. And Wild Things is a deft, astute thriller with twists and turns and sexy performances. And again, you got Bill Murray in that, and John
Matt Dillon.
Yeah, Matt Dillon, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. An absolute master of a filmmaker. So
yeah, and such a humble, down to earth guy. You can really just talk to him.
They actually teach classes in college about his film. So again, I'm super honored that he's going to be our guest when we return. Scott, it looks like we're approaching the midnight hour, the witching hour. Thank you, my brother, for always getting my back.
Oh, you got it.
Thank you for coming on. And is Joe going to reappear? Magical Joe. Magical Joe. I didn't want to run past midnight, Joe, because I know you're a hardworking, tired father and family man.
Yeah. So, Scott, for everybody out there in TV land, let them know where they can find you, social media and projects. What do you got going on?
Okay. You can go to scottschiaffo.com, and that's just a master page that will take you to the IMDb, my YouTube channel, my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Facebook. All my name, Scott Schiaffo. If you Scott Schiaffo search on Amazon, all of the films and books I've worked on and music are all available there. If you go to scottschiaffo.com and you're interested in buying some signed merch, I do it for a charity called Angels of Animals. So if you buy it through my website, majority of the proceeds go to the Angels of Animals Rescue here in northern New Jersey. And I got a handful of conventions coming up at the end of the year. The dates are not stuck in my mind. And right now we're all so nuts with what's going on with this virus. I'm a little afraid that maybe they're going to maybe get bumped along or maybe not even happen now. But I'm always working on something. And I'm just very thankful for the folks who come out to look for my stuff. So thank you. And thank you for having me on here.
And I got to just post this again. Libby, with the love for you guys.
Thank you, Libby.
Libby.
We love you. So before you cut me off, because you didn't let me finish my goodbye last week, Joe.
Well, are we done with Scott, or is Scott going to go on?
I'm done. I'm good.
Goodbye, Scott. I'll
Sorry,
talk to you soon,
Scott.
pal.
I was busting chops. No, before he goes, though, we didn't get to one picture and one thing about him.
Zing!
Sorry.
Joe. No worries. Scott is a friend of this show and is going to be a reoccurring pal who shows up frequently.
I look forward to working with you more, Scott. We'll see you next time.
Got it.
A pop culture icon, Scott Schiaffo, pal.
Good night.
Good seeing you.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, so what did you... We survived, Joe. Okay, maybe you didn't.
I was pre-med. Just remember that.
What were your thoughts on Brad?
Brad's a good guy. He's an interesting fella, and he has great life experience.
That he does. All right, Joe. Remember, no man is a failure who has friends.
Oh, is that the exit?
Good night, everybody.